Exclusive with NigerExtra.com.
Dive into a world of music with the maestro of musical melodies.
It's 6 o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you on this new and bright day. It's a Thursday, the 19th of June. My name is Asanda, Beda. We are Africa Rise and Shine, broadcasting from our Channel Africa studios. That's live in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm riding solo today. Peter Ndoro will be joining us tomorrow. So lots to come up on the show, and if you are tuned in on DSTV 802, on OpenView 6 to 8, on www.channelafrica.co.za, on SABC Plus, as well as our live streaming platforms at Channel Africa 1 is our handle everywhere. You can find us literally anywhere. Whichever way you tuned into us, we welcome you to the show and we thank you. We are together for the next 3 hours. We'll be out at 9 o'clock covering a whole lot of stories that are happening in and around our continent that you need to be aware of, or maybe need to get a different angle from as we get into developing stories. So lots to come up in this hour. We look at South Africa's Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, who is in Russia, there to boost trade ties and promote the country as an investment destination. There's that G7 happening there. Also, the family of Zambia's former president, Edgar Lungu, having some grievances in terms of his body being repatriated from South Africa. Certain funeral arrangements that were not followed in the way they were supposed to. We'll unpack that. Yesterday, we spoke about this story as we had our Channel Africa reporter at Lanseria Airport, where he was set to have his body, or his remains rather, repatriated to Zambia. That process was halted. That's the latest development. So we'll find out what's happening in terms of that. So lots of those stories coming up, not just those two, but those are just the highlights for now. Let's get into our news first. Here's Onele Nzinzi with that bulletin, and then following her is Musibudi Makura with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. The family of Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu has halted the return of his body from South Africa, accusing the government of breaching key agreements over his funeral. The arrangements had been finalized and his remains were due to be flown back home yesterday on a private charter plane after days of uncertainty and negotiations between the family and the government. The family now says it finds it very difficult to believe that the government will stick to their end of the agreement. Family spokesperson Makebi Zulu said all the government had released a draft program of the funeral without consultation with the family. President Hakainde Hichilema was scheduled to receive the body upon its arrival at the airport in the capital, Lusaka. The former president's body was set to be taken to his residence in Lusaka, where it would lie in state ahead of his state funeral on the 22nd of June and burial the following day. South African political analyst Levi Ndoro says the fact that the former Umkhonto weSizwe Party Secretary General Flo Chivambo will be briefing the media outside the party could be signalling his departure. The MK party has said it did not sanction the media briefing, which is set to take place today. Chivambo was removed as the party's Secretary General last month and was subsequently deployed to Parliament. During the party's Youth Day commemorations in Durban on Monday, party leader and former President Jacob Zuma informed MK party members that it would not tolerate indiscipline amongst high-ranking party members. Ndoro says Chivambo has a lot of options.
He might decide to join a new political party. He might decide to form his own political party. He might also decide to become an influential civil servant outside the structures of political parties. He might decide to also join the workers' movement or organize people who are in the workforce.
Reports from the Democratic Republic of Congo say the country's justice minister has resigned over allegations that he embezzled millions of dollars from a prison project. On Monday, Constant Mutamba was banned from leaving the capital Kinshasa by the country's top court. The BBC's Jacob Evans.
For a man who said he could smell embezzlement in the room during a televised debate and that anyone caught siphoning government funds should be given the death penalty, this saga is rather embarrassing. Constant Mutamba is accused of taking $19 million from funds set aside for the construction of a new prison. Over the weekend, Congo's National Assembly voted overwhelmingly to strip him of his political immunity, paving the way for legal proceedings to begin. He's also facing charges of contempt of court after claiming there was a political conspiracy being waged against him.
Lastly, US President Donald Trump has remained non-committal on whether he is directly involved, the United States, on Israel's side of the war against Iran. In his latest comment, Trump said, "I may do it, I may not." The BBC's Sebastian Usher reports.
The momentum of Israel's attack on Iran isn't letting up. President Trump has made it clear he believes Tehran has no means of holding Israel's aerial offensive at bay and has called for unconditional surrender from Iran's leadership. And he's implied that the US may actively join in as it continues a military build-up.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Manchester City defeat Wydad Casablanca 2-0 at the FIFA Club World Cup, while the Proteas are set to go on a trophy tour in Santon today. Details of these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
So, on the team today is on technical production, Titimalo Macau. On news is Onele Nzinzi. On sports, Musibudi Makura. Economics news brought to you by Buntle Headbush. Our social media has been handled by Talent Butelezi. On production, Nomalanga, actually. Nomalanga Butelezi. On production, we have Stagazelo, Joey, and Pumudzo. And of course, I'm Asanda Beda. That's part of the team that makes Rise and Shine come to you every morning, 6 till 9. I don't think I've forgotten anyone. I think, yeah, that's all of us. So every time after, or every day after the news, we give you a roundup of stories that have taken place on our continent, highlighting what's happened, what you could have missed, and what to look forward to in terms of what we expect to develop in the news space coming into this new day, this Thursday, the 19th of June. So we start in the country that we are broadcasting live from, South Africa, where the president here, Cyril Ramaphosa, has concluded his 3-day visit to Canada to participate in the G7 Leaders Outreach Summit, which focused on the key issues of energy security. Ramaphosa was the only African head of state invited to the summit in the picturesque region of Kananaskis, as South Africa, in its capacity as G20 president, sought to pursue a strategic alignment within the framework of G7 or G20 cooperation.
We've had the opportunity to interact with a number of heads of states and government of various countries. And the issues that we put on the table is the issue of climate change and how important it should be treated by the global community with regard to our just energy transition, and also what we intend to achieve out of the G20 with regard to climate change, the financing thereof, but more particularly how we deal with the after effects of climate change, particularly the floods that we've been suffering from, where a number of our people have died, as well as the destruction of infrastructure. We put that firmly on the global agenda, that there should be sufficient funding for incidents such as those.
The family of Zambia's former president, Edgar Lungu, has halted the return of his body from South Africa, accusing the government of breaching key agreements over his funeral. The arrangements had been finalized, and his remains were due to be flown back home on Wednesday on a private charter plane after days of uncertainty and negotiations between the family and the government. SABC News International editor Sophie Mukwena has more.
Mashatile will visit 2 Russian cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg, to attend high-level engagements as well as economic diplomacy activities. In Moscow, Mashatile is due to meet with Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, and in St. Petersburg, he will attend the annual St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Mashatile is expected to participate in the forum's key event, the plenary session, along with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Mashatile has also been invited to participate as a speaker in the Russian-African Business Dialogue. This year, International Economic Forum is held under the theme of Shared Values, the foundation of growth in a multipolar world. On the sidelines of the forum, Deputy President is scheduled to deliver a public lecture at the St. Petersburg State University called South Africa's G20 Presidency in a rapidly changing geopolitical environment.
The increased use of microgrids has come under the spotlight at the Africa Energy Forum that is taking place in Cape Town. Microgrids are a small network of electricity users with a local source of supply. South African National Energy Development Institute CEO Dr. Titus Mate tells us more.
I think there's still some tension between government and the family, and of course I think the party that Lungu belongs to. And we waited until towards lunchtime. Then we saw the officials of the Defence Force who were there, who were supposed to conduct ceremonies as part of the send-off, rolling back the red carpet, and we were confused as to what's happening. You could see that there was tension now, and nobody wanted to explain what was happening. But we then saw on social media that the family has issued a statement saying that they don't agree with the government of Zambia in terms of the process of repatriation, particularly as it relates to arrival of the body in Zambia, what needs to happen. And they were saying that government has changed all the plans that they agreed on.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's demand for unconditional surrender on Wednesday, as its UN ambassador said it considered the U.S. as complicit in Israel's attacks. Rachel Graham reports.
We need to integrate. But to integrate, we need to harmonize policies, we need to harmonize grid codes. There's quite a lot of things that have to happen. But we should not just only be focusing on electricity trading. We must also focus on other commodities. For instance, trading on gas. Now there's a buzzword around critical minerals. We need to be talking about that. How do we interconnect Africa to be able to trade not only on electricity, but trade on gas, trade on oil, trade on resources that needs to be moved across. We need to maybe look at liberalizing the immigration rules so that we're able to move people from one country to another.
That's how we come to an end of today's Africa Roundup. And coming up, we'll be zooming into West Africa in terms of news happening in that specific region of the continent with a political analyst.
In a recorded television speech, Khamenei said Americans, quote, should know that any US military intervention will undoubtedly be accompanied by irreparable damage.
Iran's got a lot of trouble.
Trump has veered from proposing a swift diplomatic end to the war to suggesting the United States might join it. In social media posts on Tuesday, he mused about killing Khamenei. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva, Ali Bahraini, told a news conference he already saw the US as complicit in what Israel is doing.
If we come to the conclusion that the United States is directly involved in attacks against Iran, we will start responding to the United States.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126 and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Time now to take a look at some stories making headlines in West Africa. We're joined by Dr. David Nyekorach Matsanga, an expert in political science and international relations, as well as the founder and chairman of African Forum Limited. Dr. Matsanga, always great having these catch-up sessions with you. How are you on this Thursday?
Thank you very much, my sister. Good morning, Africa, and good morning, the rest of the globe listening to us.
Well, today let's start with over 100 people being killed, while upwards of 3,000 have been displaced. This is in Nigeria's central Benue state, following an attack by gunmen who are believed to be herders. What do you know about this story?
First of all, I want to pay condolences to the Christian families that have been massacred, killed, and other religious people and other citizens of the Benue state of Nigeria who have been brutalized, killed by Fulani herders who are roaming across this country. A well-organized brigade that is armed to the teeth to destroy the people, kill people, target Christians in the states of Nigeria. But I've said time and time, Asanda, that Nigeria is a state without a state, a nation without a state, a state without a state. The governance has collapsed. Everything has collapsed in Nigeria. What I think it is a sad state for me.
What is being done about these herders? We've heard reports before that they are attacking the communities around them. Dr. Matsanga? Dr. Matsanga is an expert in political science and international relations, and we are getting analysis from him in terms of what's making headlines across West Africa. I think we just got cut off on the line there. Our producers are trying to get a hold of him again. Our first story today having been those 100 people killed and then upwards of 3,000 who have been displaced in Nigeria's central Benue state. And this is after an attack by gunmen who are believed to have been herders. I think you got muted there by mistake, Dr. Matsanga. Are you back? Dr. Matsanga? All right, maybe we should drop the line and try again, and we'll continue with our West Africa wrap. This is Africa Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
We continue with our coverage of what's made headlines in the West African region of our continent with Dr. Matsanga, an expert in political science and international relations. Let's move on, Doctor, from that previous story in Nigeria because our interruptions have taken time now. Let's move to Tuareg associations based in Mali and Burkina Faso. So they have jointly filed a complaint with the International Criminal Court accusing their nation's armies and the Russian paramilitary group Africa Corps of crimes against humanity and war crimes. Is this a surprise to you?
It doesn't surprise me because ICC is controlled by the French. French pay salaries for all ICC's officials from the judge up to the cleaner in International Criminal Court. I have had battles with International Criminal Court for over 25 years. And I've told the world, this is the most useless court that you can ever find on planet Earth. It is not surprising, therefore, for anyone to come and say that these people from Burkina Faso and Mali have taken a complaint to the ICC. Yet the ICC has not picked up the same terror groups that have actually been paid by France to come and cause terror on the governments of Mali and Burkina Faso. What a contradiction. This is just very disturbing for an organization to think of taking sides because they have been instructed by the people who pay their salaries. It is wrong. This is France fighting back Burkina Faso. This is France fighting back Mali. My sister, that is how International Criminal Court works.
Does it give it strength, this complaint with the ICC, that they have banded together, Burkina Faso and Mali?
It doesn't sound strange to you because France doesn't like both of them. France does not like Mali. France were chased out of Mali. The French were chased out of Burkina Faso. And they are now using other tactics to fight the governments in this, to cause an uprising, an insurgency, a military coup, counter coups within the region. That's what the French do in order to keep hands on the minerals, the oil, the diamond, the gold that is in that region. That's all we have. And Africans must wake up and start fighting back.
Let's move to Cote d'Ivoire now, Doctor. Protesters have taken to the streets there this past weekend. They did, and this was because they were demanding that the opposition leader, Tijane Tiam, be reinstated on the voters' roll or voters' list, on the electoral list, that is. Because of his dual citizenship, he's got French nationality as well as Cote d'Ivoire nationality. He was removed from the electoral list. There's not much time, though. Elections are due for October. So how much of an influence do you think these latest protests will have?
That is a country, as I predicted, I want you to call me back here in October, November. That is another coup, a military coup in Ofik. That's another country where war is coming. First of all, Ouattara, Asanda Ouattara, is not from Ivory Coast. His nationality is Burkina Faso. We know it. Mbeki and Chisano, we know. We sat down in Abidjan that time when he was fighting Babugo. We know who he is. When he got the presidency, he's married to even a French lady. He's married to a white French lady. Sorry, I'm not a racist, from France. So why do you bar other people who have passport? If he has renounced it, allow him to go to elections. So my sister, Africa never listens. Africa goes back to do the same mistakes. Ouattara did the same mistake. He entered as a president with two nationalities, supported by France. He won, he kicked out Babugo, took him forcefully to ICC. I fought, Babugo came out. Now again, there you are. We are preparing for another war.
Yeah. And there are three other prominent opposition leaders that were removed from the electoral list. So were these protesters also in support of them?
Yes, because you see, why do you remove opponents? Leave them, defeat them if you have organized. One of the things that I like about my country, Uganda, is that President Museveni allows all the opponents to be on the ballot box and beat them. Not because everybody loves the president, because they are fragmented, they are disunited, they have no ideology. Everybody wants power. So Museveni comes and beats them. Leave them to be on the ballot paper. Why do you cause a conflict? If you have got yourself organized, why do you cause a conflict? That Ouattara is one of the most useless presidents that we have had in Africa.
Can we see a postponement in the elections and they're being pushed back from the October set deadline?
Yes, we should. African Union, this is where African Union has failed us. The Political and the Diplomatic Commission of African Union Peace Security Committee is the most useless body that we have on the continent of Africa. It has failed us. My sister, it never worked. The only time it worked was when Dlamini Zuma was the chairperson. That lady from South Africa, my good friend, Mulongo live Dlamini Zuma. It worked. She would take up and say, no, this is wrong. But now African Union is dead, waiting for burial.
Let's move to Ghana now. The Tertiary Education Commission of Ghana, or the GTEC, has officially prohibited citizens from publicly using honorary doctorate and professional titles. The reason they're given is that they want politicians, religious leaders and business figures to stop misusing these degrees. Do these titles preserve academic integrity? This was a question that was raised even in the country of South Africa in terms of how serious can we take these honorary degrees?
Why do these tertiary institutions give them out? Why? That you see, Africa, let me tell you, my sister, African countries think upside down. Why do you issue them first? The institutions are the ones issuing them. The tertiary institutions in South Africa are the ones that call on Thabo Mbeki, come, have your degree. Call on so and so, come, have your degree. Why don't you stop the root cause? If there's a jigger in your foot, do you cut off the foot? Or you go for the figure, the jigger, and in that toe and remove it. You know, you are mature, you are an African lady, you know what jiggers are. We all grew up in the rural areas. So, look, you don't cut off the leg. The tertiary department should go back in their rules, in the Ministry of Education, and put guidelines. Honorary degrees are part and parcel of education. Outstanding achievement that the people have made. So it is a matter of strengthening the institution, not cutting off arbitrarily like a communists and so many other things. Useless people. This is Africa is, you need to be harsh to tell Africans in order for them to wake up. They are always reactive. They are not proactive. Why have they waited for too long? Why doesn't the South African government go to the Ministry of Education and streamline this? Why do you wake up to say, oh, this is this, oh, this is not? Africa, wake up. Thank you. Let's go.
Or we take it as symbolic recognition, because we can't also take away the fact that the people who are given honorary degrees are people who have succeeded in their fields and have influenced a lot of people and are seen as, the leaders in their fields.
Exactly.
But then it becomes like a symbolic recognition, and that's something that's known across the board. More like an award.
It's not symbolic. It means you, for example, if you have discovered the method of how to drive a car without using petrol, isn't that an indication? It deserves. You have worked for the country. You have fought for ANC. You have thought apartheid. You have destroyed. You have been on television speaking from morning up to evening. You studied the subject. You do this. These are symbolic. These are recognition. What about medals? Why do you give medals? Do they mean anything? Why do we give medals to people who even butchered us?
So just finally, Doctor, let's go to Gabon. They've terminated their Sustainable Fisheries Partnership Agreement with the European Union after 18 years. Are they threatening to pull out, or they have pulled out already from this fisheries agreement?
Gabon is one of the most confused countries in Africa, with a military junta turning itself into a political organization. One of the countries in Africa that the French uses. So if they are fighting their own, who is in the European Union? The French. So it means they are not happy with their masters. It is too late. You have been there. They have been depleting our fish maritime. They have been destroying. They have been fishing with bigger nets that destroy the ecosystems of the maritime climate in West Africa. That's why we have weather coming, landslide, rainfall, floods. So we have a problem here. So let's depleting our fish, which we could export. They don't want us. They even come with workers. We don't want Africans to work there to fish. One of these days, Africa should clean its maritime laws so that Africans can benefit from their waters that are near them.
Right, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks again for joining us on this Thursday. Dr. Matsanga, have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you very much, Asanda, and always keep it going until we are done and change Africa. Africa must be changed. We must be proactive. God bless you.
100%, and God bless you too. Dr. David Matsanga is an expert in political science and international relations, as well as founder and chairman of the Pan-African Forum Limited. 6:31 Central African time it is. It's time for news headlines. Here's Onel Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo say they've reached a draft agreement to end years of on and off conflict. The breakthrough has come at talks mediated by the United States. The feud between the late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu's family and the government of Lusaka has delayed the repatriation of his body from South Africa. The family is accusing the government of breaching key agreements over his funeral. And climate scientists have warned that the world is drawing ever closer to breaching the international target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsintsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time now for our first full sports bulletin with Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. We'll start here. So the South African duo of Thembinkosi Lorch as well as Cassius Malula were named in the Wydad Casablanca starting lineup, while the Citizens handed debuts to new signings Ryan Cherki as well as Tijani Reinders when the two teams met at the FIFA Club World Cup yesterday. So the Premier League outfit got off to the perfect start when Phil Foden opened the scoring after just 2 minutes with a powerful volley from close range after goalkeeper El Mehdi could only parry Savino's cross back into danger. Now the Moroccan Giants nearly pulled themselves level on 10 minutes when a cross was floated towards Lorch in the box. However, the South African forward failed to connect with only Edson to beat, while also he had tried to catch out the City goalkeeper from inside his own half a few minutes later. Lorch was an influential figure for Wydad Casablanca throughout the first half, as he carved out an opening on the 31-minute by skipping as well past one City defender before laying the ball off to Malula, who was denied by Edson in the box. However, Wydad were made to rue those missed opportunities as City doubled their lead on the stroke of half-time as Jeremy Doku got ahead of his marker in the box and volleyed home directly from a corner. Wydad will be back in action this coming Sunday with a match against Italian side Juventus. While Cricket South Africa's director Enoch Unkwe says the Proteas' victory at Lord's is a tribute to the countless South African fans as well as former players who have stood by them through the hard times. The Proteas were burdened by the chokers tag for decades for their inability to get over the finish line in the past, but Unkwe says the Proteas' triumph in the final of the ICC World Test Championship over Australia in London over the weekend will inspire generations to come.
This restores a lot of faith, a lot of belief in South African cricket. I mean, we always look at this format as a foundation to key fundamentals and to other formats and obviously the growth of cricket, not only in South Africa but globally. What's encouraging now is that this is going to motivate a 15-year-old, a 11-year-old, a 19-year-old who's about to graduate from high school going into senior cricket. And now they're going to look at this completely different. How they looked at it before, like you say, there's a lot of T20 cricket. But again, this is going to be really, really encouraging and motivating. And we're going to ensure, obviously, we continue to build these building blocks.
Meanwhile, still staying on cricket news, Shubman Gill will be in the spotlight for a new-look Indian side without star batsman Virat Kohli, as well as Rohit Sharma bid to end their 18-year wait for a Test series win in England. Gill succeeded Rohit Sharma as the captain after the latter announced his retirement from Test cricket last month. Just days later, Kohli said he was also buying out of Red Bull internationals as well. Gill also had the additional responsibility of filling Kohli's shoes at number 4 in the batting order, while the India vs captain Rispa Pant on Wednesday revealed that that was where the new skipper would bat in the first of 5 Test matches against England, starting in Headingley on Friday. The 25-year-old Gill has a modest Test batting average of 35 in 32 matches, a figure that drops to 29 in away games and also declines very further to under 15 in 3 matches in England. On to boxing news now. The newly appointed CEO of Boxing South Africa, Tsholofelo Lejaka, as CEO, says he needs to sort out all the dividing issues, otherwise he will be failing at his job. Lejaka has outlined his ambitious roadmap for the future of the sport in South Africa, with the chief aim now being restoring respect in the organisation. Bridgerweight world champion Kevin Lerena gets his own opportunity in the ring on the 19th of next month and also wants to use it to further shine the light on boxing development.
Yeah, mad. Co-main event, Wembley Stadium, 97,000 people in London against Lawrence Okoli for the WBC silver heavyweight #1 spot. A win against Okoli will put me right in line to face the winner of Usyk and Dubois or Ajit Kabeyel. It's crazy to think, but this is what we do it for. This is what we work hard for, and I've never been shy of hard work. So for me to represent my country is what makes me proud. I'm very proudly South African. That's why it's an absolute honor, and I glow with pride to give all fighters, male and female, white, black, African, whatever it is, an opportunity and a platform, because this is truly how we grow the sport within South Africa.
And finally, South African Circuit Kyalami says plans to upgrade its facility to Grade 1 status has been approved by the FIA, which would make it eligible to host Formula 1 races once the necessary work are complete. Kyalami is among 3 venues vying to bring Formula 1 back to the African continent, although the sports CEO Stefano Domenicali indicated last month that a deal was still a long way off. Kyalami, located in the north of Johannesburg, last hosted a Grand Prix 1993, which also was the last time a Formula 1 raced on the African continent. The circuit is listed to by the FIA, meaning it would not be able to host a Formula 1 return in its current state. That's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Your weekday afternoons have been upgraded by The Upside with me, Tebohole Kuleni, and my partner in crime, Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
And if you want to find out all things luxury, fashion, travel, and arts and culture, this is exactly the place to be.
Prepare to be delighted. If it's hip, if it's happening, we are talking about it. We talk about what's now, what's next, and most importantly, what matters most on the African continent and the diaspora.
Do you know what time it is? Catch us every weekday on Channel Africa from 1 to 4 p.m. Central African Time.
Yeah, that's us every weekday afternoon.
All right, let's find out what's happening for the first time in the world of business on this new Thursday. Here's Buntle Headbush with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. In our top business story this morning, the chairperson of Regional Bloc ECOWAS's Council of Foreign Ministers, Yusuf Taga, says West African nations want to strike deals with the U.S. over energy and rare earth minerals. However, the Trump administration's looming expansion of travel bans risks derailing these efforts. U.S. President Donald Trump this month implemented full or partial travel bans for foreign nationals from a dozen of countries as part of his immigration crackdown, and a possible broadening of these restrictions to an additional 36 countries would include nearly all of West Africa. Taga says this could be unfortunate if it came to pass because the region has many opportunities and is ready to do deals. The Commonwealth remains optimistic about its shared future, with leaders pointing to strong foundations for economic growth. In her keynote address to the Commonwealth Business Summit in Windhoek, Namibia, newly appointed Commonwealth Secretary-General Shirley Botchway highlighted the unique advantages that can help accelerate intra-Commonwealth trade.
We have the fundamentals: a market of 2.7 billion people, shared language, legal systems, and deep trust, a 21% average cost saving on intra-Commonwealth trade. But we also have something more important, a shared belief that trade and investment should deliver prosperity for everyone across all 56 of our member states, from the largest economies to the smallest islands, from cities to rural communities.
The OPEC Fund for International Development has pledged to provide more than $1 billion in funding to Africa and developing countries elsewhere as part of a broader $2 billion pledge by Arab nations over the next 5 years. The fund also laid out a new trade finance initiative to help countries secure imports and liquidity during periods of turmoil. Nosipo Zuma reports.
The announcement comes as the United States and a number of European countries reduce the amount of bilateral aid they provide to poorer countries around the world. The Vienna-based OPEC fund announced on Wednesday around $720 million in new financing to support development efforts across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and the signing of $362 million in new loan agreements. The agreements included a $300 million plan for Rwanda over the next 3 years, as well as programs worth $65 million and $40 million, respectively, in Ivory Coast and for the Uganda-based East African Development Bank.
Some economists are optimistic that consumer price inflation in South Africa will remain low despite uncertainty around global developments. Stats SA says inflation held steady at 2.8% in May after rising marginally in April, up from 2.7% the previous month. The food and non-alcoholic beverages category was the only one contributing to the 0.2% monthly increase to the CPI. Economist Davi Ruet notes that the overall inflation print has been low for some months now, contributing to a fall in inflation expectations.
But more importantly, perhaps, is that since inflation has been around 3% for quite a long period of time now is perhaps the time for the Minister of Finance to reduce the inflation targets, move away from the 3 to 6% band. Don't even set the inflation target at 4.5%, but set it at 3%. Now is that absolute wonderful opportunity to change the inflation targets, to change it to 3% in line with what the Reserve Bank would like to see inflation targets to be.
Further afield, the chairman of the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, says now is not the time to cut interest rates with the U.S. economy facing inflationary pressures. The Fed again left its key interest rate unchanged, despite President Trump's sustained calls for cuts. Jerome Powell said U.S. consumers would be picking up some of the bill for Trump's import taxes, with prices in some sectors already starting to rise.
We believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. Surveys of households and businesses, however, report a decline in sentiment over recent months and elevated uncertainty about the economic outlook, largely reflecting trade policy concerns. It remains to be seen how these developments might affect future spending and investment.
Now for our first look at the financial indicators this morning, one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,543 naira 57. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 28. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 60. And in Zambia, it's 24 kwacha 11. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 49. In Russia, 78 rubles 47. India, 86 rupees 43. In China, it's 7 yuan 18. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 99 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at the commodities this morning, gold is trading at $3,373 per ounce and platinum at $1,335 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $76.51 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459 for Channel Africa Business. I am Buntle Hetbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
All right, our G20 fact for this Thursday. Did you know that as of March 2025, South Africa had the highest unemployment rate among the G20 countries? The unemployment rate in South Africa stood at 33.9% at the time, with the country continuing to be plagued by an economic downturn, including energy shortages and a high cost of living. On the other hand, Japan, a fellow member of the G20 group of nations, had the lowest unemployment rate at just 2.5%. And that's our G20 fact this morning, staying with matters related to the G20 group of nations. Today marks the first day of the Youth 20 pre-summit in South Africa. This is a key event building up to the official Y20 summit in August. It brings together youth delegations from across the world to negotiate on issues relating to both the Y20 and G20 respectively, in the hope of driving inclusive and a youth-led global policy change. Bunolo Maribe has more.
This Y20 pre-summit is significant as it is being held during Youth Month, a stark reminder of how powerful youth-centered leadership can be. Commemorating the legacy of the 1976 Youth Uprising, the summit creates the opportunity for young people to shape various policy priorities, such as climate, digital innovation, economic inclusion, as well as global governance. Y20 South Africa Chair Raymond Matlala outlined this importance in his address.
In the spirit of Youth Month, in the spirit of Ubuntu, that powerful belief in our shared humanity, I call on each of you to engage fully, to bring your boldest ideas, lived experiences, your cultural wisdom, and your unwavering hope to this process. Together with our counterparts, we will draft the Zero Draft Communique that does not simply echo old promises, but set the new global standards for youth engagement, one that reflects our diversity, our agency, and our vision.
Ambassador Khulisa Mabongo reiterated South Africa's overall G20 themes and priorities.
South Africa has therefore placed solidarity, equality, and sustainability at the center of our presidency. We firmly believe that our challenges that are facing the world today, whether it is poverty, climate change, inequality between and within countries, can only be resolved through cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships. This is the basis of our chosen theme for our G20 presidency.
Other engagement group representatives were present in the event, highlighting the importance of solidarity and cooperation. Women 20 South Africa chairperson, Professor Nania Bola-Muller, has called for an inclusion of women in the decision-making processes.
We cannot exclude the voices of women, and we cannot exclude the voices of young people. There is no inclusive future without gender equality woven into the fabric. As South Africa leads, Women 20 reaffirms a global promise to amplify the voices of young women, to advocate for inclusion, education, meaningful work, digital access, climate justice, and seats at the decision-making tables.
This while the keynote speaker, former Minister Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, says that the youth have a huge responsibility to make progress in the African development.
We are a continent that is redefining its identity and charting its developmental path. We're a continent where 60% of the global available arable land is on this continent. But the shame about that is that we're a continent that imports food. We have more than 300 days of sunshine. We have water. And we have people. But why do we still have hunger? So the young people have a responsibility, a great responsibility, to reverse that.
The pre-summit is expected to conclude on Thursday, where the final draft zero will be presented among the youth delegations. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News, Pretoria.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
On the sidelines of the 2025 Commonwealth Trade Ministers meeting in Windhoek, Namibia, leaders and diplomats gathered for the inaugural Commonwealth Business Summit. The event opened with a strong call for inclusive economic development, deeper trade ties, and resilience in the face of global uncertainty. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange attended the high-level gathering and filed this report.
It is now my distinct honor, on behalf of the Government of the Republic of Namibia, to declare the Commonwealth Business Summit officially open.
Against a backdrop of global economic fragility and rising geopolitical tensions, the Commonwealth is looking inward, calling on its 56 member states to reshape trade and investment for a more resilient, people-centered future. Namibia's Minister of International Relations and Trade, Selma Ashipala Musavi, set the tone, highlighting the Commonwealth's collective strength and untapped potential.
Indeed, our Commonwealth and heritage, underpinned by our 56th member, comprised of 2.7 billion people, or a third of the global population. I believe that the Commonwealth can harness the vision of promoting local production and intra-Commonwealth trade through building a unique platform that aligns our aspirations to address youth unemployment, build resilient value chains, embrace the green and digital economies, and reduce dependence on extractive industries.
But amid the optimism, a warning echoed from across the world. Speaking virtually, Samoa's Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Fiame Naomi Matafa, described a global order under strain and a Commonwealth that must adapt.
We exist in a world of growing conflict, war, and crisis. Too many of us are facing an uncertain future, unsure of how we will do good on today's needs, tomorrow's investment, and our survival. The attack on multilateralism is of particular concern. From where we stand, the few systems that once promised us protection are being dismantled. More importantly, for this gathering, geopolitical and geo-economic factors are influencing shifts that can only accelerate the fragmentation of the global.
Despite these headwinds, the Commonwealth remains optimistic about its shared future. In her keynote address, the Commonwealth Secretary-General Shirley Bochwe pointed to the foundational strength that can drive intra-Commonwealth trade forward.
We have the fundamentals: a market of 2.7 billion people, shared language, legal systems, and deep trust. A 21% average cost saving on intra-Commonwealth trade. But we also have something more important: a shared belief that trade and investment should deliver prosperity for everyone across all 56 of our member states, from the largest economies to the smallest islands, from cities to rural communities.
Bochwe said the path to shared prosperity depends on inclusion, with a special focus on empowering small businesses, women, and youth across member states.
If we want to harness Commonwealth trade for shared prosperity, we need to focus on three imperatives. 1, inclusion. Trade must work for all, not just somewhat for big companies in major markets, not just for a small segment of the potential Commonwealth market of 2.7 billion people. That means SMMEs, which make up over 80% of businesses across the Commonwealth, must have access to finance. It means putting women entrepreneurs and young people at the center of our trade strategy.
Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Windhoek, Namibia.
The question of whether or not South Africa's Independent Electoral Commission should be given more powers to police political party funding came into focus as the IEC's two-day symposium opened in Durban today. The symposium, which is being held under the theme Sustaining Multi-Party Democracy Through Enhancing Political Funding Regulation in South Africa, looks at the successes and challenges over the last 4 years since the implementation of the Political Party Funding Act. The forum has a variety of participants from various sectors of society, both international and local. Zara Groenewald has more.
Since the implementation of the Political Party Funding Act, pressure has been put on political parties to declare donations over 100,000 rands. In a review of the last 4 years, the IEC has said that they are pleased with the overall compliance by political parties. However, the question of whether the IEC should have more power in policing political funding was a hot topic of the day, with some parties like Action SA previously suggesting the Commission get access to party bank accounts to monitor funding. IEC CEO Saima Mabola maintains that ultimately it is up to the members of parliament to decide.
We felt that is a policy matter that the IEC should not involve itself with. And I think we are correct that it's a matter that must be decided by the policyholder. So you can see that we are really trying to navigate a trapezium to ensure that there are areas in which we can be involved and there are areas in which we can be involved because of the sensitive political nature of the topic we're handling today.
Dr. Miguel Otoola, who is a member of the International Council on the Electoral Integrity Project, echoed these sentiments.
So I'm really glad that South Africa is reflecting about, strengths and weaknesses of this type of funding, how to improve oversight, how to improve enforcement. I think the IEC is doing a good job, but we also have to think that it's not only up to them, it's also about Parliament, because it's there, the political parties that need to, reach an agreement to improve the frameworks and improve the, sanctions, if that's the case. Yeah.
Although one success of the implementation of the Act has been transparency of funding, a major challenge is participation, both by the public and private sectors. Over the last 4 years, 8 billion rand has been administered to political parties. Dr. Nhwapele Ntuno from the Human Science Research Council says that public trust needs to be built over time.
Yes, so the trust issue really dates back to about 10-15 years now, and it is affecting other facets of our democracy, including, of course, the Multi-Party Democracy Fund. But I think the key here is that we need to remember that the Act, for example, is only 4 years old, and as people get more information and interact with the process of donating and allocating resources to political parties, they are likely to be more trusting of the process. So it is still early days, but the trust issue is definitely worrying, and it is something that we need to address because it ends up having a spillover onto other processes as well.
The symposium will continue on Thursday with a special address by the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana. I am Zara Groenewald in Durban.
Well, it's 7 o'clock Central African time as we enter the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine. We say good morning to you. My name is Asanda Beda, broadcasting from Johannesburg in our Channel Africa studios in South Africa. You're listening on audio bouquet of DSTV 802, on OpenView 6 to 8, on www.channelafrica.co.za or SABC Plus, or you could be tuned in via our live streaming at Channel Africa 1 throughout our social media platforms. We welcome you to the show, and as we look into this next hour, we talk about the mortal remains of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu, which remain in South Africa amid a conflict between his family and the Zambian government, and mental health experts raising serious red flags over the skyrocketing screen time in South Africa. All those stories and more will be coming up. Let's get our news update first. Here's Onel Nsinzi, and then followed by her is Musibudi Makura with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo's technical teams have initialed a draft peace agreement that is expected to be signed next week. The provisional agreement, announced in a joint statement, could mark a breakthrough in talks held by President Donald Trump's administration to end the fighting in eastern Congo and bring billions of dollars of Western investment to the region. The provisional agreement, reached after 3 days of talks, addresses territorial integrity and the prohibition of hostilities and the disengagement, disarmament and conditional integration of non-state armed groups, according to the statement. The feud between the late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu's family and the government of Lusaka has delayed the repatriation of his body from South Africa. The family is accusing the government of breaching key agreements over his funeral. They now say it is very difficult to believe that the government will stick to their end of the agreement. The sixth Zambian president passed away earlier this month while receiving specialized medical treatment in South Africa, Didaba Tsotezi reports.
The body of the late Edgar Lungu was supposed to leave South Africa for burial in his home country. However, disagreement between his family and government has once again delayed the repatriation of the mortal remains of the Zambian former leader. It was expected that Lungu will be buried next week in Lusaka. A period of mourning has been extended.
The Eastern Cape provincial government in South Africa will observe a day of mourning today following the death of 90 people during the devastating floods that lashed parts of the province, with Umtata being the most affected area. The service will be held at King Sabata Dalindyebo College in Umtata. The floods have left thousands of displaced, with some residents still missing as the search is ongoing. Several provincial and national departments have been visiting the affected areas to offer some relief to the flood victims. South African political analyst Levi Ndoro says the fact that the former Umkhonto weSizwe Party Secretary General Floyd Shivambu will be briefing the media outside the party could be signalling his departure. The MK party has said it did not sanction the media briefing, which is set to take place today. Shivambu was removed as the party's Secretary General last month and was subsequently deployed to Parliament. During the party's Youth Day commemorations in Durban on Monday, party leader and former President Jacob Zuma informed MK party members that it would not tolerate indiscipline amongst high-ranking party members. Ndoro says Shivambu has a lot of options.
He might decide to join a new political party. He might decide to form his own political party. He might also decide to become an influential civil servant outside the structures of political parties. He might decide to also join the workers' movement or organize people who are in the workforce.
Lastly, climate scientists have warned the world is drawing ever closer to breaching the international target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. The target was agreed a decade ago to try to avoid some of the worst impacts of climate change. The BBC's Mark Potting.
This latest assessment examining the state of climate change is littered with striking statistics, but the one that may cause most concern is how close we are to that symbolic 1.5 degree warming target. Scientists estimate that humanity can emit only about 130 billion more tonnes of CO2 for a 50-50 chance of keeping to that limit. At the current emissions levels, that could disappear entirely in the next 3 years. That would, in effect, commit the world to breaching 1.5, probably around 2030.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Real Madrid wilt in Miami Heat as Al Hilal spoil Xavi Alonso's debut at the FIFA Club World Cup, while the Proteas will go on a trophy tour in Santon today. Details of these and other stories at 7:30.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
6 minutes past 7 Central African Time. Let's get into this story now. Zambia is in a period of national mourning following the death of former President Edgar Lungu. But the return of his body from South Africa has been halted yet again, this time by his family, who accuse the government of breaching key funeral agreements. Tensions are rising over who controls the late president's send-off. And we now cross to our Lusaka correspondent, Arthur Davis Sikopo, for the latest on this developing story. Arthur, thank you for joining us. Always great catching up with you. How are you on this Thursday?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm great. And how are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you so much. A surprise turn of events. Just yesterday, we crossed live to Lanseria Airport, where our reporter Michael Mbewe was telling us that there's a process of the repatriation of the remains of Edgar Lungu that are going to be shipped out of South Africa into Zambia, and now it's been halted. Arthur, what exactly led to the family's decision to halt the return of Edgar Lungu's remains from South Africa?
Well, so exactly what led to the family halting the repatriation of the body of former President Edgar Lungu to Zambia from South Africa was that the family has got concerns, and these concerns are arising from the meetings that they have been having with the Zambian government or the state. So they had agreed on certain things, such as the family repatriating the body privately to Zambia, and among other things. But to their surprise, a day later, a day before, there was a program which was released by the Zambian government, which didn't include some of those concerns which they agreed upon as a government and, of course, as a family. And those raised concerns with the family, and that is one of the reasons why they had to halt this repatriation of the body to Zambia. And one of the reasons was that they had agreed that when the body of former President Lungu comes to Zambia, it will be taken to Chifwema, where he used to stay. But the Road Development Agency had instituted some works around the road where Edgar Lungu used to stay. So some of those were the concerns by the family that, why is the government now trying to work on the roads when they know that we already have a program of, moving the body of Edgar Lungu to and from his house for body viewing and for other processes within the country. So those are some of the concerns that the family has had.
So according to the family, the fault is on the Zambian government side, not the South African side, because that's what I wanted to clarify when the family was saying that there was a release of a funeral program, and that was not with consultation. It's from the Zambian government side.
Yes, so they have been in consultation, and hoping that they continue with some of these consultations, because the family has been skeptical from when they saw the change of the program and all those things. So, but they are hopeful that probably these talks will continue. That is from the government side. So we saw a statement coming from the secretary to the cabinet, who said that they'll keep on engaging the family as a state, and of course using other mediators in this particular process, and that President Hakainde Hichilema will soon address the country when it is appropriate, and when they obviously have got enough information on the processes that are yet to be undertaken.
How much of these complaints from the family is part of traditional practices, and to what degree can we understand it in terms of a political and sentimental grievance playing out?
Well, others would say that there's a lot of politics which is at play, and obviously coming from his political party, the Patriotic Front. But others are saying that it is just that they are grieving, and that is why they are coming up with all these demands and all that. So it is a mixed, a broad issue. In terms of maybe family concerns, in terms of maybe traditions and all that. I think there hasn't been much in terms of what was discussed with the government in terms of tradition. They of course wanted to take the body of Edgar Lungu to Petaoke, where he was coming from, but the state of course objected to that, and they had agreed that they will not take the body that side. So everything was just supposed to be done from Lusaka, and little about traditions.
The former President Lungu reportedly had said that he does not want President Hichilema near his funeral. Was that demand ever formally agreed to, and how has this now played out into this current standoff?
So indeed, yes, according to the family, yes, President Edgar Lungu said that he didn't want President Hakainde Hichilema to come close to his body and during this particular period and till he's buried. But in the meetings which they had, they had come to a compromise where a state funeral was accorded, and of course, the one who was going to lead the state funeral was the president of Zambia, the current president of Zambia, Hakainde Hichilema. But yesterday, when the family, gave this particular briefing of holding the body from coming to Zambia, they put across that particular point that former President Edgar Lungu did not want President Hakainde Hichilema, to be there, and their concern also was that on the program it was written that President Hakainde Hichilema was going to lead this particular funeral. So those are some of their concerns, and for now it obviously remains to see whether now they are whether these talks whether they'll agree after resuming obvious talks that they're going to resume.
Was there no will in place for Edgar Lungu, the former president, or is that to the family's discretion? Because clearly that would settle this matter.
Publicly, we have not heard of any will. Probably it is maybe up to the family's discretion, but publicly we have not heard any will. We know that our late president Mwanawasa did a will, and for him, in fact, he did it even on video. So for Mwanawasa, it was very easy, and of course, he died in office, but it was very easy, and we didn't have all these all these changes and all these issues happening around. Of course, he died in office, but he had the will. But for Edgar Lungu, we do not know whether that was in place. But publicly, we don't know whether that was in place. But probably, maybe it is with the family.
Yeah.
We're not sure.
All right. So, what is the role that the Opposition Patriotic Front is playing in all of this? What are they saying, and how are they framing this dispute?
For the Patriotic Front, they have been going with the reasons and, of course, the concerns from the family, and they have been very much in support of that. Of course, some people would say that some of the top leaders, such as the Vice President and the Secretary General of the Patriotic Front, Given Luminda and Rapona Kachinda, have been influencing the family. But of course, they have come out in open say that they are not influencing the family. And the elder sister to President Edgar Lungu came out in open to say that it is us, the family, who are making this, and not the Patriotic Front or anyone from the political sector.
How are ordinary Zambians reacting to this uncertainty, especially given that 16-day mourning period?
Well, Zambians, as of Sunday, when a joint press briefing was held by the government and the family, things became clear, and of course the tense situation which was there, became it eased up. But as of yesterday, when this announcement came through, I think confusion has come back again. Because now people do not know what is really happening, and others are now saying that let them just bury where they are. And of course, we've gotten a hint from one of the local media that are claiming that there is that particular aspect of wanting to bury in South Africa and resume the remains of Edgar Lungu later on. But we're not yet sure whether that is true. So, but there's some, mixed reactions to this. Others are saying that, we are tired now of this particular drama. Let's just close the chapter and we move on as a country, because various sectors are affected by the national mourning and, all this funeral which is happening.
And talking about the affecting of the various sectors, there are financial implications involved. Logistical costs are involved here. The storage of the remains of Edgar Lungu, as well as transportation costs. With all these delays, is the family prepared to be able to intervene and cover those costs? So are they asking for the Zambian government to step in?
Well, for the family, they have been clear from the onset. They have made it very clear that, they will do it on their own, and they do not need government to come in any way. So they will repatriate their body, and of course, they will take care of everything that, is involved until his body is brought to Zambia. So obviously, they are comfortable with whatever is going on in terms of finances, and they're just looking at their pockets in terms of covering all those costs.
Do we know if there's been any calls in terms of the South African government's intervention, or is this simply between the Lungu family and the Zambian government?
Well, generally it has been between the Lungu family and, of course, the Zambian government. But we are informed that former presidents from the region and, of course, some current presidents from the region have been involved in terms of trying to mediate all this matter. And, of course, we can probably maybe just, assume that, of course, the South African government could be also part of these talks. Or obviously, maybe President Ramaphosa could be part of those people that are talking to the family and talking to the government. But we are not yet sure. But the only thing that we've been told is that there are some former presidents within the region, and of course some current presidents within the region that have been talking to both the family and the state.
It would be very interesting, and maybe this is going to be a developing story, and we predicted that it will be yesterday, to hear from a family spokesperson, because when it comes to family matters and the deceased, as you say, some are saying the family is grieving, and somehow that affects the thinking processes, and also the statements that are issued might not even be from the entire family, it might be from a few individuals. We know how it plays out on the African side of things. Besides politics in terms of families and who gets to say what and who gets heard and whose voice is louder than the others. So it will be interesting to get a family spokesperson to just hear their side of the story, because this needs to be resolved. What is next to happen, or likely to happen, in your view, Arthur?
Well, for me, from when I heard the family spokesperson, saying that at some point, one day, the remains of Edgar Lungu may come to Zambia. For me, I think that is signaling that there could be some plans of probably maybe taking long to bring back this body to Zambia, or probably using maybe very private means and to bring back the body, without maybe announcing. And maybe Zambians will only be told that the body is in the country, maybe after being thrown, secretly, because their contention has been much with the government. So that is their contention. So for me, I think anything is likely to happen. They can keep the body that side in South Africa for some time, or maybe even bury, or maybe they might sneak it in, secretly. And maybe, then now let the Zambians know that the body is in the country. For now, we are not yet sure of their plans.
Right. Let's leave it there for now. Thanks again for your time and joining us from Lusaka.
Thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thanks, Arthur. Our Lusaka correspondent, Arthur Davis Sikopo, giving us the latest on the ongoing funeral dispute surrounding former Zambian President Edgar Lungu. Funerals have disputes within their family political structures as it is. Now imagine adding the national political structures to that, and that this was a statesman. So even the Zambian people feel some type of ownership and for the family to release him so they can also pay their respects. A tug of war, that one. 20 minutes past 7.
Africa at Play with NATO and ETO Chairman.
The Confederation of African Athletics, the CAA President, Mr. Hamad Kalkaba Malboum, talk to us about the state of athletics in Africa as it stands, and what picture are you looking at 5 years later?
Yeah, athletics in Africa is strong. We are able to organize our major events in time. Like this year, we will have the under-20 and under-18 African Championship in Nigeria. Next year, we will have the senior in Ghana. In 2027, we will go back to Algeria to organize the under-18 and under-20. And then 2028, we will have the senior championship in Gaborone in Botswana. Well, by this program, we can increase our performance. And at the same time, we are considering the fact that within the Police Federation, they are identifying young talent every year within the national program, within the scholarship championship. And so the athletics in Africa is in good standard.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
The Shy Guy, a Morning Switch.
Have you ever listened to a song and then it gives you goosebumps? Cause it takes you way back in the 80s. My goodness. Woo. Hey baby. You hear Yvonne Chaga Chaga there. I wanna talk to the DJ. And then the DJ goes like, hey baby, I've got you on the other side. There were no WhatsApps then, right? There were no sliding in the DMs at the time. Oh man.
Your weekend mornings are activated with the Shy Guy on the Morning Switch.
Your weekday afternoons have been upgraded by the Upside with me, Tebohole Kuleni, and my partner in crime, Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
And if you want to find out all things luxury, fashion, travel, and arts and culture, this is exactly the place to be.
Prepare to be delighted. If it's happening, we are talking about it. We talk about what's now, what's next, and most importantly, what matters most on the African continent and the diaspora.
Do you know what time it is? Catch us every weekday on Channel Africa from 1 to 4 p.m. Central African Time.
Yeah, that's us every weekday afternoon.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Tulisile Beda, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions
in the digital era.
Dr. Tulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers
across the continent.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda
on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Still to come on Rise and Shine, we get our news update and our sports update, as well as economics news. Right now, let's talk about this. As screen time skyrockets across South Africa, mental health experts are raising serious red flags, especially when it comes to our children. According to the South African Society of Psychiatrists, or SASOP, excessive screen use is fueling a growing crisis among young people, leading to increased anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts. Joining us now to unpack the dangers and offer some solutions is Professor Kuman, psychiatrist and member of SASOP and head of healthcare leadership at the Stellenbosch Business School. Professor Renata, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this Thursday?
Good morning. It's nice and chilly, but all good.
All good. South Africans are amongst the highest when it comes to users of or heavier screen users globally. Why is this a serious concern when it comes to our mental health, especially our children?
Yeah, I think if we look at our children, adults have such an important role to play. We are the role models of what our children learn to do. And there's very clear evidence dating back to 2017 about the negative impact on mental health and cognitive functioning in both children and adults. But what more recent studies have shown, that children that spend more than 5 hours a day on screens are up to 70% more likely to have suicidal thoughts. And even if their screen time is 4 to 6 hours a day, it's more than double the risk for mental health disorders such as anxiety and depression than children that spend less than an hour to 2 hours per day.
What is behind the alarming connection between excessive screen time and anxiety and depression and even suicidal thought? Is it a matter of the content or the time spent in front of the screen?
There's actually various factors. The one is definitely the content. Obviously, watching an educational program or a program about nature has a different impact than watching shorts or the things that the children scroll the whole time, or social media where there is false comparisons with what they think real life is, because you only see the wonderful things in other people's life, but you do not see the real behind the scenes efforts. And then that social comparisons definitely have a negative impact. The second aspect is the time. So we know that there's clear guidelines also proven by research where we should try to adhere to and limit screen time according to a child's age. The younger, the less. But thirdly, there's also the neurobiological effects. We know that screen time, and that's the way that it's working, why we get addicted to it, has an impact on specifically also our dopaminergic systems, which is so important for attention and concentration and motivation. And if we're the whole time on screen, it actually decreases your own natural dopamine levels, which means you want more and more of it. And the fourth negative factor is the sedentary lifestyle associated with screens. Instead of playing outside or being active and exercise, children and adults are sedentary, and then we have the association with obesity, sleep problems, etc., and all of that contribute to the negative mental health impacts.
Right, and that touches, I guess, on the physical issues and the academic decline, which was going to be my next question. But you do mention that adults are the role models here. So many parents do struggle to set screen limits because they're also constantly online. They also need to switch off, so to speak, from the stressful things of life. How can they also set a better example without feeling hypocritical and also neglecting their own needs for downtime?
I think it's so important that downtime doesn't mean on-screen time. Downtime really also should mean digital detox and having real-life in-person conversations with your family and friends and being out in nature or exercising. But it can start with small changes, although there need to be clear rules in terms of a house, almost like a technological contract between parents and children. They can just be good role modeling as well. For example, never have a cell phone at a table during dinner or in a restaurant or at home. Also make sure that you charge your devices, for example, in a dedicated area such as the kitchen. Cell phones and other screens does not belong in a bedroom, not for adults and also not for children, because it does interfere and you think you're just quickly going to check the time and before you know you've checked your emails and so forth. So just making small changes, but then it's also important that we must know that for some children, it is a way of filling their time. They need to have other activities. So if you remove a screen, you have to replace it with something else, whether it's a game, whether it's a walk with your child. So we must remember that devices can never replace your role as a parent and the quality time you should be spending with your child.
Yeah, I struggle to the point of charging. That's a good one for me that I've just learned actually to implement, because my teenagers will charge their phones and they on their phones as they are charging them. And my thing is always, but how are you charging your phone and you're still on it? You using the battery while you're trying to replenish the battery. Can you take a break? So that one, having a central area in the house where it's set, this is where we charge our phones and we leave them there, that's a good one for me. But finally, Professor, with technology, I mean, being so embedded also in schooling life, we use it every day with homeschooling and things like that. It's more difficult for that balance. So how do we balance and what does that balance actually look like in circumstances where we can't control it? My child is learning online.
Yeah, I think it's very important there also to use devices that you can use apps to monitor it. So there's a difference between academic use and social use. And we also understand that some people have online works, or you work on Excel spreadsheets or whatever. So we do not necessarily count that dedicated academic or occupational time as I want to say the dangerous screen time or the negative screen time. It's what you do outside of that. So gaming, social screen time, doom scrolling, etc. But if you work online, you should even be more removed from your devices. We try to encourage people, even if you work, that it shouldn't be more than 6 hours a day on screen, and that you still do some paperwork or desk work or deep dive. And in the same in the educational setting, there is ways that you can protect devices and only have the necessary programs and things that your child need. And then also remember, you can also switch off the data or the Wi-Fi. It's not always removing it, but making it a closed environment. I think some of the schools are really getting on board where they lock down into protective environments on the devices that the children use at school, that it's not free for all and they can't go on outside networks.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good strategy to protect our children, because we must know that there's also things that we don't want our children to be exposed to. But technology is important, it is embedded, it is a skill that we need. We don't want to increase the technological divide that there is, but we need to be better at monitoring it and also by leading by example.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Schoeman. We're going to leave it there for now. Enjoy your day.
Sure.
Professor Renata Schoeman is a psychiatrist and member of the South African Society of Psychiatrists. She's head of healthcare leadership at Stellenbosch Business School. 32 minutes past 7 Central African time. It's time for our news headlines. Good morning, Onele.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo say they've reached a draft agreement to end years of on and off conflict. The breakthrough has come at talks mediated by the United States. The Eastern Cape provincial government in South Africa will observe a day of mourning today following the death of 90 people during the devastating floods that lashed part of the province, with Umtata being the most affected area. And tension remains high in the Middle East as Israel and Iran continue missile attacks, killing hundreds of civilians. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning once again from the sports desk. Real Madrid labored to a 1-1 draw against a spirited Al Hilal club in the FIFA Club World Cup on Wednesday, as Xavi Alonso's managerial debut for the 15-time European champions delivered only flashes of promise in searing Miami Heat at a nearly sold-out Hard Rock Stadium. Gonzalo Garcia stepping in for the fever-stricken Kylian Mbappe gave Real an early lead with a composed finish, while Ruben Neves then levelled from the spot before half-time as Simeone Inzaghi's men showed defensive grit as well as enough attacking intent to rattle their illustrious opponents. Now, a last gaps minute missed penalty from Federico Valverde then summed up the day for Real's legs and ideas as they wilted in the heat and humidity at a nearly sold-out Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. Real will next face off with the Mexican side on Sunday, that is Puchaca, while Al Hilal will take on Salzburg in what could prove a decisive clash for qualification to the knockout stages of the FIFA Club World Cup. Meanwhile, South African duo of Temenkosi Lorch as well as Cassius Mailula were named in the Wydad Casablanca starting lineup, with the Citizens handing debuts to new signings, that is Ryan Cherki as well as Tijani Rangers, as the two teams faced off at the FIFA Club World Cup on Wednesday. Now, the Premier League outfit got off to to a perfect start when Phil Foden opened the scoring just about 2 minutes with a powerful volley from close range after goalkeeper El Mehdi could only parry Savino's cross back into the danger zone. Now the Moroccan Giants nearly pulled themselves level on 10 minutes when the cross was floated towards Loch. In the box, however, the South African forward failed to connect with only Edson to beat, while he also tried to catch out the City goalkeeper from inside his own half a few minutes later. Loch was quite influential for the Wydad Casablanca team throughout the first half as he carved out an opening on 31 minutes by skipping past the City defender before laying the ball off for Mailula, who was denied by Edson in the box. However, Wydad were made to rue those missed opportunities as City doubled their lead on the stroke of half-time as Jeremy Doku got ahead of his marker in the box and volleyed home directly from the corner. Wydad will be back in action on Sunday against Italian giants Juventus. Now, Proteas batting consultant Ashfield Prince has issued a timely reminder to South African cricketers looking to push the national team aside for the low-hanging fruits of T20 League across the world. Now, South Africa's ICC World Test Championship winning men's team touched down at the OR Tambo International Airport on Wednesday with the mace in hand as they rightfully received a hero's welcome following their success at Lord's in England this past weekend. Prince, who formed a crucial part of head coach Shukri Conrad's technical team, says the joys of winning a major trophy with the Proteas badge on their chest trumps any lucrative reward of playing in a T20 Global League.
Well, you're hoping that, the young kids will aspire to play Test cricket as much as they aspire to play the short format, the T20s and all that. Something I said in the dressing room to the players before the match, that there are lots of badges in the world, like T20 badges for lots of teams around the world, and you can earn a lot of money. But only this badge can give you the opportunity to walk out into the middle of Lords and represent your country and do what they have done. Only this badge can give you that opportunity. So for every young player, don't ever forget that.
Now, despite his work bearing fruit as Aiden Markram as well as Captain Themba Bavuma notched up an instrumental century, as Waller has a half century respectively, Prince also insisted that credit should go to those who step out onto the pitch.
In the background. The boys have to go out there into the cauldron and do the business. We just try and prepare them the best that we can. Yeah, look, like I say, we just in the back trying to prepare them as best as we can, but all the credit must go to the boys.
And finally, Shubman Gill will be in the spotlight as a new team without star batsman Virat Kohli, as well as Rohit Sharma, bid to end their 18-year wait for a Test series win in England. Gill succeeded Rohit as captain after the latter announced his retirement from the Test cricket just last month, and days later Kohli said he was also buying out of red ball internationals as well. Gill also has an additional responsibility of filling Kohli's shoes at number 4 in the batting order, while the Indian vice-captain Risbah Pant on Wednesday revealing that this is where the new skipper would bat in the first of 5 Test matches against England starting at Headingley on Friday. The 25-year-old Gill has a modest Test batting average of 35 in 32 matches, a figure that drops to 29 in away games and also declines even further to under 15 in the 3 matches in England. So India's number 4 position has been dominated during the past 3 decades by all-time batting greats such as Sachin Tendulkar as well as Kohli, who in that specific position scored 21,056 runs between them in 278 Test matches. Gill's also first challenge will be ensuring that demands of captaincy doesn't detract from his batting in England, where India have won just 3 Test series in 1971, 1986 and 2007. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons danser au son de Kaya. Que je dédicace à vous tous, chers auditeurs, qui êtes en train de suivre cette émission Mix Vibration. N'oubliez pas, vous pouvez nous suivre à partir de l'application SABC+. Vous choisissez Channel Africa pour suivre l'émission en direct. Nous allons danser au son de
Annie Kalonji. Tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of business as we say good morning to Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you very much, Asanda. Good morning. In our top story this morning, the chairperson of Regional Bloc ECOWAS's Council of Foreign Ministers, Yusuf Taga, says West African nations want to strike deals with the U.S. over energy and rare earth minerals. However, the Trump administration's looming expansion of travel bans risks derailing those efforts. U.S. President Donald Trump this month implemented full or partial travel bans for foreign nationals from a dozen countries as part of his immigration crackdown, and a possible broadening of these restrictions to an additional 36 countries would include nearly all of West Africa. Taga says this could be unfortunate if it came to pass because the region has many opportunities and is ready to do deals. The Commonwealth remains optimistic about its shared future, with leaders pointing to strong foundations for economic growth. In her keynote address at the Commonwealth Business Summit in Windhoek, Namibia, newly appointed Commonwealth Secretary-General Shirley Botchway highlighted the unique advantages that can help accelerate intra-Commonwealth trade.
We have the fundamentals: a market of 2.7 billion people, shared language, legal systems, and deep trust, a 21% average cost saving on intra-Commonwealth trade. But we also have something more important, a shared belief that trade and investment should deliver prosperity for everyone across all 56 of our member states, from the largest economies to the smallest islands, from cities to rural communities.
Meanwhile, Samoa's Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Fiame Naomi Matafa, has issued a stark warning about the fragile state of the global order. Addressing the Commonwealth Business Summit virtually, Matafa says the world is facing growing conflicts and crises, urging Commonwealth nations to adapt in the face of shifting geopolitical and economic forces.
We exist in a world of growing conflict, war, and crisis. Too many of us are facing an uncertain future, unsure of how we will do good on today's needs, tomorrow's investment, and our survival. The attack on multilateralism is of particular concern. From where we stand, the few systems that once promised us protection are being dismantled. More importantly, for this gathering, geopolitical and geoeconomic factors are influencing shifts that can only accelerate the fragmentation of the global.
Some economists are optimistic that consumer price inflation in South Africa will remain low despite uncertainty around global developments. Stats SA says inflation held steady at 2.8% in May after rising marginally in April, up from 2.7% the previous month. The food and non-alcoholic beverages category was the only one contributing to the 0.2% monthly increase to the CPI. Economist Davi Roet notes that the overall inflation print has been low for some months now, contributing to a fall in inflation expectations.
But more importantly, perhaps, is that since inflation has been around 3% for quite a long period of time now is perhaps the time for the Minister of Finance to reduce the inflation targets, move away from the 3 to 6% band. Don't even set the inflation target at 4.5%, but set it at 3%. Now is that absolute wonderful opportunity to change the inflation targets, to change it to 3% in line with what the Reserve Bank would like to see inflation targets to be.
Moving further afield, the chairman of the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, says now is not the time to cut interest rates with the U.S. economy facing inflationary pressures. The Fed again left its key rate unchanged, despite President Trump's sustained calls for cuts. Jerome Powell said U.S. consumers would be picking up some of the bill for Trump's import taxes, with prices in some sectors already starting to rise.
We believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. Surveys of households and businesses, however, report a decline in sentiment over recent months and elevated uncertainty about the economic outlook, largely reflecting trade policy concerns. It remains to be seen how these developments might affect future spending and investment.
Now moving on to our indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,543 naira 57. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 28 Kenya. The dollar is trading at 128 shillings 60, and in Zambia, it's 24 kwacha 11. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 49. Russia, 78 rubles 47. India, 86 rupees 43. In China, it's 7 yuan 18. In South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 99 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities this morning, gold is trading at $3,373 per ounce and platinum at $1,335 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $76.51 a barrel. And those are some of the business news making headlines this morning. I'll be back with more in an hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hedbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Effective leadership starts with having the right people in the boardroom, those with the skills, insight, and commitment to manage business sustainably while fostering trust and strong communication. That's according to Anne-Marie van der Merwe, who is Executive Chair of the Fluid Rock Governance Group. She was speaking at a seminar hosted by Fluid Rock in collaboration with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in South Africa. The event tackled a range of issues, including Trump's tariffs, the local economic landscape, and how South African businesses can navigate uncertainty through scenario planning. Let's discuss this now with Advocate Anne-Marie van der Merwe as we welcome you, Advocate, to Rise and Shine. How are you on this Thursday?
Good morning to you and your listeners. I'm very good, thank you. Battling with a bit of flu, so apologies for the voice, but otherwise all good.
It's that season, and you don't sound bad at all, so we appreciate you making time instead of resting in bed for us this morning. Let's start here. What specific qualities or skills do you believe boardrooms are lacking most in today's uncertain business climate?
I think an important point before I respond directly to your question is how to understand how important it is as to who is in the boardroom. At Fluid Rock, at the risk of sounding over dramatic, we basically live in boardrooms. We observe boards and behavior, and the importance of composition of boards have just become so evident for us. A study was done in 2013 on the key drivers behind corporate failures. And the most prevalent factor in those failures they found was the composition. It was the skills of the non-executive directors and their influence. In other words, board composition really matters. And in today's world, considering this VUCA world on steroids that business is operating in, whether it's, COVID, whether it's tariffs, whether it's war, there will always be something else that will hit our shores. You really need individuals in a boardroom that has the ability to adapt, who are agile, but you also need people with a very strong EQ and the ability to navigate ambiguity. So it's much about the softer skills. You will not hear me talk about qualifications or CV. Having said that, however, business acumen, understanding business is equally important. And the strategic thinking. I think we've become so, unfortunately, we've taken on such a tick box, mindless approach to governance, and some of the governance codes out there around, for example, focusing on the element of independence. But while independence is an important attribute of any individual, their business acumen, their strategic understanding were equally, if not even more important. People that can really foster a culture of innovation, if you think about disruptive technology. So I don't know whether I'm answering your question, but there's just so many skills that are needed. But I think the bottom line is composition matters, and you need a board to be intentional about who they bring into the board.
And we say it's an uncertain business climate. So how does one implement scenario planning in ways that will prove effective?
Yeah, and I think, again, it talked about, number one, who you have in the room. I think in the article I wrote, I spoke about kind of using the analogy of a company being like a ship. And you have the bridge and you have the engine room, and you need these capable people in the bridge are really the people that I just spoke about, the people that can interpret not only the instruments in the bridge, but also have, their own view on the immediate surroundings of the ship and the horizon. And so you really need those kind of people that can interpret that information and then act upon the interpretation. And I think also we need to be, it's a mindset of being opportunity focused as opposed to maybe the more negative risk focused approach that we take. And the willingness to lift our heads, being aware of that ecosystem that we're operating in, what's changing, interpreting the information that's coming to us, understanding the players that are coming in, and then making sense of it. I don't know whether you may recall a great case study, I think personally, on this is the Blockbuster story.
Yes.
And, when this small little entity called Netflix appeared on the horizon, having seen the gap in the Blockbuster business model in actually generating more income on penalties for late returns than renting out videos, Netflix saw that gap and they came at that, and Blockbuster was completely oblivious to what was coming. In fact, I understand that their view was that they were too big to fail. Now we know today where Blockbuster is, and we know where Netflix is. So it's the leadership. It's about the people on the bridge being able to look at these different, the flags. At our conference, we had this conversation around scenario planning, around being able to identify the different flags, not only in your own country or on the continent, but globally. How that's going to impact potentially our business, and how do we deal with that? I want to say also that I think in my experience sitting in boardrooms, and we do thousands, well, let me not say thousands, hundreds of evaluations of board performance. And the one element that really, in my mind, were elevated on the board's radar screen on the bridge after COVID was understanding the need for them to be agile, to that these very unexpected, enormous impacts on our businesses can hit us tomorrow. And that therefore we need to be far more alert to what's going on in the world around us and how agile we are to withstand those stormy seas that our ships are going to go in. So it really a lot, I think, depends on the people in the room.
How do we ensure that once we implement our scenario planning as companies, that this is not just a compliance-driven approach, but it actually is a strategic decision?
I really, and I know I'm going to sound like a stuck record, it is about the people, it's about leadership. So while we have governance codes, and I've already alluded to the fact, worldwide, countries have got governance codes, but it's important that we understand that that is a framework. It is about the people in the room. We need the King 4 report in South Africa so correctly points out that governance is first and foremost about leadership. It's about effective and ethical. And then I want to add, based on a conversation I had this week, another descriptive word, impactful leaders in our boardrooms, because their behaviors, their values is what will culminate ultimately in the values and the culture of the organization. So we need to be clear as the leadership of our organizations on our purpose, on our values, and on the culture that we, desired culture of our organizations. And then once we've kind of got that foundation, we need to be intentional. We need to be intentional with who's in the boardroom, as I already alluded to. We also need to really have a basic understanding of the world that we operate in. In my experience working with boards and often getting involved when there's also, governance failures or there's potential conflict in boardrooms, I'm often amazed at the level of ignorance, where our board members do not have the basic understanding of the regulatory environment, of the governance environment within which these organizations operate. So having that basic understanding and also understanding that governance is a journey. It's not a destination that you reach and then you can say, well, from now onwards, everything is going to go, hunky-dory. It's a continuous process. At Fluid Rock, we always say that we meet our clients where they are. And then we go on this governance journey, to grow over time as the organization goes through its own life cycle. So it's it's that basic understanding, having that framework in place. And then if you take your cue from governance codes like King, it will tell you what should, as a minimum, be on the agenda of the board. Risk, technology, compliance, how we remunerate, how we assure the integrity of our information. So it's a architecture that's built on the foundation of the values and the purpose of the organization and the value and the values of the leadership. And then to build this house based on having the right people, doing the right things, and doing that in the right way.
And talking about doing things in the right way, those African companies that have not future-proofed their companies and taken the steps to do that, what can they do now as a reactive measure or a way of catching up, but also not rushing through the processes that will destroy them ultimately?
No, absolutely. That's why I think I've referred to journey already. Your attitude, if I can quote an old poster saying, your attitude determines your altitude. So I believe if people embrace governance, not as a tick box exercise, but really as an opportunity to increase the value of their businesses. It's a strategic enabler of value, unlocking value. If you see that, number one, you get that. And then you start slowly with looking at these different building blocks, the elements around board composition. Who do we have in our our leadership, the quality of our leadership? Then look at the processes and procedures. I mean, one of the critical elements for an effective, impactful board is information. How do we ensure the architecture of the right information coming into the board, onto the bridge of my ship, to empower and enable the leadership to make the right decisions as well? What is on the agenda? How much time are we spending talking about strategy and scenarios and the flags? Or is our board meeting mostly taken up by lots of tick box, governance related discussions, not getting to the heart of the business? So it's that whole design on who's there, how do we operate? And then board evaluations. Let's take an honest look at ourselves. Let's look in the mirror and say, where can we sharpen our pencil?
All right, let's leave it there. Advocate van der Merwe, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you. I've really loved the opportunity and best wishes to you and your listeners this
morning. And get well soon. That flu will leave you just now.
Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
Thanks so much. Advocate Anne-Marie van der Merwe, Executive Chair of the Fluid Rock Governance Group, talking to us about how companies can future-proof their operations using also a thing called scenario planning. It's 8 o'clock Central African time. We enter now the third and final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, well, thank you for doing just that. Still lots to cover in this hour. We look at South Africa's Department of Agriculture partially lifting the ban on imports of poultry products from Brazil, and the Transport Evolution Africa Forum and Expo, which is continuing here in Johannesburg, where we are broadcasting live to you in our Channel Africa studios. My name is Asanda Beda, and let's get our news update, the latest from Onele Nzinzi. After her is Musibuti Makura with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo's technical teams have initialized a draft peace agreement that is expected to be signed next week. The provisional agreement, announced in a joint statement, could mark a breakthrough in talks held by President Donald Trump's administration to end the fighting in the eastern Congo and bring billions of dollars to the Western investment to the region. The provisional agreement, reached after 3 days of talks, addresses territorial integrity and a prohibition of hostilities and the disengagement, disarmament and conditional integration of non-state armed groups. This is according to the statement. The feud between the late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu's family and the government of Lusaka has delayed the repatriation of his body from South Africa. The family is accusing the government of breaching key agreements over his funeral. They now say it is very difficult to believe that the government will stick to their end of the agreement. The sixth Zambian president passed away earlier this month while receiving specialized medical treatment in South Africa. Ridaba Tsodetsi reports.
The body of the late Edgar Lungu was supposed to leave South Africa for burial in his home country. However, disagreement between his family and government has once again delayed the repatriation of the mortal remains of the Zambian former leader. It was expected that Lungu will be buried next week in Lusaka. A period of mourning has been extended.
The Eastern Cape provincial government in South Africa will observe a day of mourning today following the deaths during the devastating floods that lashed parts of the province, with Umtata being the most affected area. The death toll now stands at 92. More than 4,300 people are homeless in the wake of the flooding. Eastern Cape provincial spokesperson Kuselwa Hankis says temporary residential units will be rolled out to the victims.
5 bodies remain unidentified. The provincial government is still urging members of the public to report any missing persons at their nearest police station to assist the ongoing recovery efforts.
Speculation is rife that the former Umkhonto weSizwe Party Secretary General Floyd Shivambu could today announce that he is leaving the party. This after he issued a media briefing invitation in Johannesburg, South Africa, which was not sanctioned by the MKP. Shivambu was recently removed as the party's Secretary General. Ndebo Mogobo reports.
Hailed as the brain trust behind the EFF's policy in its formative stages and later helping to draft the MK party's constitution and build its structures, Floyd Shibambo's future seems to be hanging in the balance in the MKP, and party leader Jacob Zuma seems to have had enough of him.
Abantu sebeke baba o-Secretary General sebe u-7 manje. Noma ngabe uzazi ukuthi umkhulu, uyathandwa, uyikho konke, we don't care.
Political analyst Levi Ndoro says there is no love lost between him and the powers that be in the party.
Duduzile Zuma has always demonstrated that she disliked him, and with his removal, Duduzile's wish has been granted.
Shibambo will unveil his future plans at noon today.
Lastly, tensions remain high in the Middle East as Israel and Iran continue missile attacks, killing hundreds of civilians. United States President Donald Trump, meanwhile, has remained non-committal on whether he's directly involved the U.S. on Israel's side in the war against Iran. In his latest comments, Trump said, "I may do it, I may not." For a local perspective, Professor Siphamandla Zondi, the director at the Institute for Pan-African Thoughts and Conversations at the University of Johannesburg, unpacked the strategic interests that is driving the conflict.
What the regional players are trying to do, either support this or trying to stop this. But I saw 22 Arab and Islamic states have opposed the invasion of Iran, and have called for an end to all of this. And that is what we've seen now. They will continue to position themselves that way because they also don't want to be too involved in this. There isn't at the moment. They can be forced into negotiation by the United States, but at the moment, they doesn't seem to be in readiness.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, India start a new era without Virat Kohli as well as Rohit Sharma against England, and Real Madrid wilt in Miami Heat as Al Hilal spoil Xavi Alonso's debut. Details coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
At the opening of the two-day UN Women and UN Trust Fund's second multi-stakeholder dialogue on feminist funding, South Africa's Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Sindisiwe Chikunga, has sounded the alarm on the rising tide of gender-based violence and femicide. Chikunga has highlighted the intensifying impact of global crises, from pandemics to armed conflict, on women and children, and girls, with a troubling surge in both conflict-related sexual violence and technology-enabled abuse. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has more.
The high-level dialogue has brought together feminist funders, women's rights organizations, UN agencies and development partners to forge a united front for ending violence against women and girls in East and Southern Africa. It aims to foster a shared understanding of regional investments in women rights organizations toward building consensus on promising approaches for resourcing women's movements, discuss strategies for addressing the impact of emerging geopolitical and socio-economic dynamics on resourcing for women's movements, and enhance trust and solidarity between diverse actors and promote enhanced collaboration to address funding barriers. In her address, Minister Sindisiwe Chikunga painted a bleak global outlook of violence against women.
The UN Women Report draws from research that shows gender-based violence and femicide intensifying under the weight of recent global crises. From pandemics to the brutality of armed conflict, women continue to bear the worst brunt. Since 2022, cases of conflict-related sexual violence have risen 2.5 times, and more women than ever now live in or near conflict zones.
While global emergencies, crises and conflicts have further intensified the drivers and risk factors of violence against women and girls, digitalization has exacerbated existing forms of violence, leading to the proliferation of new forms and channels of abuse.
We are also witnessing an emergence of technology-enabled violence on women and girls. As digital technologies proliferate, so too have new and insidious forms of abuse. More than half of adult women online in parts of Europe and Central Asia report having experienced technology-facilitated abuse, a modern twist on an old problem that is growing faster than systems can respond.
She says despite updated laws, systemic failures and social stigma continue to silence survivors.
Even when laws are updated on the books, many women still don't report the violence they face precisely because of the ongoing pushback and other reasons. Patterns of weak law enforcement, underfunded support services, and social stigma have cemented low reporting rates on general lack of trust in the criminal justice system. In fact, of a general lack of trust in the criminal justice system. Once again, there are women organizations that for years have dedicated themselves to reversing these trends. We should be investing in them, not divesting from them.
At the same time, the rise in anti-rights movements, shrinking space for civil society and backlash against women's rights are undermining efforts to fight the scourge, and the sharp rise in attacks against women's rights activists and organizations. Esther Waweru from Kenya is a senior legal advisor for Equality Now Africa.
This conversation that has been convened by UN Women and the European Commission is particularly critical because over the last couple of years we're seeing dwindling resources for women's rights and gender equality, but we're also seeing a rise in backlash that is very well coordinated, very well resourced, and that is hugely and negatively impacting the work that we have been doing.
Waweru says the deliberations are timeless as they seek to continue the fight of being well-resourced.
This conversation is critical in this moment in time because not only are we looking to safeguard the gains that we have made over the years, but we are also battling with new areas of violations for women and girls on the continent and around the world. And it's important not only for us to continue doing the work that we're doing, but to be well-equipped, resourced in order to address new and emerging areas of violation.
She then made a plea to funders to listen to their grievances.
This discussion is important not for us only as women's rights organizations, but also for the funders, the people who hold the money, for them to understand the issues that we're facing and for us to collectively have a dialogue on how we can address these issues.
Faizat Betmas Busari from Nigeria, representing the Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa network, has welcomed the gathering.
I think it's very critical because this is a conversation that we need to be having. We've seen globally, we're experiencing it. It's our lived reality, seeing that there's a global shift in funding, but not just the funding, but there's also the shift in the fact that gender equality is no longer a priority. So conversations like this allows feminist movements and allow us to come and sit together, strategize, think, develop advocacy or our strategies on how to move forward. So really important conversation and meeting.
She served in the war-torn Sudan, providing humanitarian assistance, and this is what she witnessed on the ground.
I've seen sexual violence, I've seen conflict-related sexual violence, women experiencing rape, not just rape, gang rape. We've seen terrible lack of access to food, access to water, disease, and then just the fact that the global community and the world are just forgetting or intentionally neglecting Sudan.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
The second day of the Transport Evolution Africa Forum and Expo continued in Johannesburg, South Africa on Wednesday. One of the sessions at the event was a discussion on reskilling and upskilling youth for the logistics, transport and supply chain sectors. The session was meant to offer a dynamic platform for thought leadership, industry networking and impactful conversations around youth employment and skills development in the sector. Sisi Sikhalo attended the session and has more on the story.
According to research, Africa's youth population is increasing and is projected to double to just over 830 million by 2050. In lieu of this growth, the continent is faced with the mammoth task of creating job opportunities and skilling its young people. The transport and logistics sector is seen as growing and a turning point for the youth. However, young people need to be empowered with knowledge. One of the sessions at the Transport Evolution Africa Forum and Expo focused on empowering young people who are already in the sector and those who want to enter the industry. The Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Customs and Freight Forwarding, Ingrid Dubuisson, shared with the young generations the challenges they have in terms of their current qualifications on the National Qualifications Framework, especially for the transport logistics industry. She says the qualifications are outdated, which poses a problem for the industry.
When graduates come to apply for jobs and to work in the industry, what they learnt in the classroom is not meeting the requirements of the business reality. And then also to make the younger generation more aware of the changing environment in transport logistics, from artificial intelligence to digitalization, and the not so much 4IR anymore, but 5IR, because things are changing at a rapid pace, and also with the increase in e-commerce and the advent of supply chain management. So, transport logistics plays a small role in supply chain management, but it's very important that we keep the younger generation and the youth aware of what job requirements are out there, what job are available in the supply chain, because it's huge, it's very broad. So it's very important, one, that as industry we bridge, or shall I say as a professional body, we bridge industry to the world of academia, so that we tell the universities, we tell the training providers exactly what it is that industry needs to make our graduates jobbable.
Another speaker at the event was Gerard van Zyl, Group Operations Director for Professional Group of Companies. Van Zyl was speaking on behalf of the employers in the industry. He shared how young people can be skilled so that employers have a pool to choose from, employees who are capable of fulfilling their jobs.
The concern during the presentation was specifically around the willingness, because of the fact that we've created expectation within our youth, that they are kind of in this era of instant gratification. If I just pitch up and I'm just there with my matric certificate, with my B degree, I should be already taken up into junior management, middle management, even senior management. And that willingness is not necessarily there to do whatever it takes, to start at the bottom and work my way up. And unfortunately, it is a challenge that I don't think is going to go away, because more and more we are creating a generation of instant gratification. I mean, you want an answer, you put it into ChatGPT. You want an answer, you type it on the internet and you get the answer. Now, all of that creates a individual that wants it now. They want it now. And when they can't have it now, they become upset. And when they become upset, it becomes a challenge for anybody now, whether they then politicize the issue or whatever they do, but they're not happy. And what further is frustrating from an employer's perspective is the fact that people, in my opinion, are lazy. Because they're so used to get stuff and get it immediately, they're not prepared to put in the hard graft.
Van Zyl says the challenges that the industry has with young people can be resolved with a collaborative effort. The session was facilitated by Nkgopotsitiro Rapo, the chairperson of Next Generation. He explained their participation in the event.
We wanted to address the subject of qualifications. And as one of the speakers said, that, he was told, and this is also what I was told, that we are told to complete matric, go to university, get our qualifications, and we're going to get a job, and obviously get married and have kids. But unfortunately, life does not work that way. I know a couple of people who have studied logistics, but they're working at KFC. And please do not get me wrong, I am not bashing anybody who is working at any other job, but you can already see the disconnect there. So the objective here was to address that, listen, as much as young people are getting qualifications, there needs to be more that they're doing. They need to be able to upskill themselves, they need to be able to reskill themselves. But can they do this alone? Unfortunately, they cannot do it alone. Government needs to intervene. Private sector needs to intervene. The tertiary institutions need to come on board as well. And also, as one of the other speakers explained, being part of a professional body is, again, very important.
Today is the last day of the event. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege.
This song has a line that I love so much in the isiXhosa language. It says, "Andinayo nesentem daga." So I went down to the Eastern Cape. So I went to Yanga and said, "Yanga, tell me here, what does andinayo nesentem daga mean?"
If I say andinayo nesentem daga, it means that I do not have any money on me. I do not have money to give to you.
Interesting, because in Chivenda I would just say atinana peni ndo cherungwe. I wonder if you have that expression in your home language when you want to say you're broke, but in a very creative way. What do you say? I'd like to hear from you.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege.
Hey guys, question. Have you thought about what happens between 9 o'clock until midday, Saturday and Sunday? Well, it's me. Those that know me call me the fun police, and I'm that girl, that voice on your radio. My name is Pule Mulebati. I'm all about the finer things in life. Where to go, what to wear, who to see, and ultimately what to do. We aspire to bring you the best in travel, entertainment, with a dash or maybe a dose of laughter. And then of course we switch things up a bit when we look at technology. I love what's happening with AI because you blink, something new pops up. So the challenge is constantly there. I'm learning every single time on the show. So catch me every single Saturday and Sunday at 9 a.m. until 12 midday Central African Time, Baba.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's newly introduced Robinhood Unclaimed Benefits digital platform has managed to assist with an estimated $5 billion in unclaimed dormant assets. This unclaimed benefit market refers to any money or financial product due to a person that remains unpaid or unclaimed for a certain period of time, the biggest pool of it being pension funds. Early adopting asset holders have reported seeing real results as over $2 million has already been paid out to citizens in a fraction of the time it once took. Tutongobeni has the report.
The newly introduced Robinhood digital platform in South Africa is reshaping the landscape of unclaimed benefits by making it easier than ever to trace, verify, and return assets to their rightful owners. This marks a significant step forward in solving a problem that has persisted for decades, caused largely by outdated processes and a lack of investment in technology. So far, over $2 million have already been paid out to citizens in a fraction of the time this used to take. Chief Executive Officer of Robinhood, Rowan Gordon, says the idea of this platform was born out of the industry struggling to reach beneficiaries of their assets.
It was actually a chat between some executives who'd done some interesting things in their prior lives. I was talking with Michael Jordan and Remo Lanisia, and we were contemplating what we could do that would fundamentally help society. And it didn't take us too long to gravitate to the idea that the unclaimed benefits industry is just such a massive problem. There's 90 billion rands worth of assets that belong to citizens, and the industry is just battling to reunite people with these assets. And we felt that that was a big enough calling.
Gordon says they relooked the whole process of tracing South Africans through the banking system and took it further by enabling those who may think they have assets due to them to check on their app.
Once we got into the industry and saw some of the challenges that happen in the tracing universe, we fundamentally re-looked at this whole dilemma And we came up with the very simple concept that it is highly likely that citizens who are living South African citizens and they have access to a financial asset, it's extremely likely that they actually have a bank account. So what we did was we set about trying to aggregate the retail banking industry's information and to use that information where people have valid, active, FECAD banking accounts and to use that as a channel to repay people their unclaimed benefits. We've had tremendous responses from the banking industry. I must say it's intuitively obvious for a bank to be able to put, potentially billions of rands back into their own customers' accounts. I mean, it's a huge win-win story for everyone concerned. In addition to using the banking channel, we have gone and put together a digital app. So it's an app that's available where people can come in and look at the Robinhood app and see whether or not there are any unclaimed benefits that are due to them. And it's also through that app process that we're able to gather information if we need to get additional information, such as copies of IDs, proof of addresses. If there is any further information to verify who we're paying the money to, the digital app allows us to collect it in a seamless and efficient way.
On the issue of how this has been received, Gordon says there's been an overwhelming response from the industry, with asset holders even signing up to this platform.
We're delighted that we've been able to sign up asset holders, that's people in control of money from various industries. We have unclaimed dividends, we've had some BEE share schemes which need to be paid out, we've had some pension benefits which need to be paid out. So we're getting a diverse response from a lot of people, and so far it's been an unbelievable success rate.
The power of the Robinhood platform lies in its ability to aggregate data from multiple sources into one streamlined digital process, removing the complexity that has long plagued the industry. For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongobeni in Johannesburg.
South Africa's Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Khusienzo Ramokgopa, says Africa must reject the notion of decarbonization at the expense of development. Ramokgopa was delivering the welcoming address at the 4-day Africa Energy Forum, which is being held in Cape Town in the Western Cape Province. The forum is a platform to discuss and implement innovative solutions for Africa's energy challenges, promoting environmental stewardship and social equity. Energy analyst Clive Mallinson says.
The fact that 600 million Africans don't have access to electricity is shocking, but it has very little to do with the transition. The transition is all about moving those who do have electricity from electricity generated by primarily fossil fuels to energy generated by primarily renewable energy fuels. Now, if you don't have electricity to start with, then there's no transition. Transition means moving from one thing to another. So basically, the move to renewable energy holds out great hope for Africa, having gone through the last century and 2 decades with plenty of access to fossil fuel types in Africa, oil in Nigeria, Angola, coal in Botswana, South Africa. There's no reason why Africa should have been left behind on energy, except, as pointed out, through a lack of will. But to link this to the transition and blame it on the transition, in my opinion, is disingenuous. There's not a transition of those 600 million. There's an opportunity for them to have electricity for the first time. And that opportunity is a little bit like cell phone technology, where we can leapfrog the need to put long transmission lines all over Africa and run coal and gas and oil in order to supply people. We can supply at the local level on microgrids on a town and city basis. And that's the great hope, and that's what we need to be accelerating in. And in fact, that's what a lot of the countries in the global south are accelerating in. We've just been sidetracked by insisting that we be allowed to make use of fossil assets that we've got and that we haven't made use of for the last 120 years for whatever reason. I think blaming it on the transition is incorrect. We need to basically be really thankful that we're at a time in history where the transition is taking place, and in a sense Africa can move from not having electricity supplied to those great number of people to doing it with electricity generated at source, so that we don't have to see transmission lines across the Great Savannah, the Serengeti, the plains of Tanzania. It would be brilliant to be able to generate electricity at source. And then, of course, in areas where there may be the need for industrialization, you can also do it with renewables, because these days storage is very cost competitive. And of course, Africa has a lot of hydro power. It has a lot of geothermal power. We seem to spend more time fighting with each other than we do on building stuff in many parts of Africa, I'm afraid to say.
8:30 Central African time, and that previous voice you heard there was energy analyst Clive Mallinson. Let's get our news headlines now. Here is Onele Nzinzi. Good morning.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo say they've reached a draft agreement to end years of on and off conflict. The breakthrough has come at talks mediated by the United States. Speculation is rife that the former Umkhonto Wesizwe Party Secretary General Floyd Shivambu announces that he is leaving the party. That's after he issued a media briefing invitation in Johannesburg, South Africa, which was not sanctioned by the MKP. And tension remains high in the Middle East as Israel and Iran continue missile attacks. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's find out what's happening in terms of India starting a new era without Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. I guess they are very important against England in that team. What are they going to do? Rachel Makura or Musibudi Makura has our sports details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Listen, we'll get into that story very shortly. I just want to start our sports bulletin with this story for now. Mamelodi Sundowns midfielder Marcelo Allende believes they now have a strong chance of progressing past the group stages following a 1-0 win over Ulsan HD in their FIFA Club World Cup opener just a few days ago. So the Brazilians are now log leaders going into the second round of matches against Borussia Dortmund, a side they have to face in Cincinnati, Ohio in their next game. Then they face off with Fluminense of Brazil in their third fixture of the group stages. That match will be played in Orlando in Florida. So a solitary goal from striker Ikram Reyners was enough to hand them the 3 points, and Allende is now confident they have to avoid defeats in their next two remaining games if Sundowns is to reach the knockout stages.
That's incredible. Don't need nothing. We need play to win more. We need win or draw the next 2 games.
Right, we'll stay with the FIFA Club World Cup. Real Madrid laboured to a 1-0 draw against the spirited Al Hilal club in the FIFA Club World Cup match on Wednesday. This as Xavi Alonso's managerial debut for the 15-time European champions delivered only flashes of promise in a searing Miami Heat at a nearly sold-out Hard Rock Stadium. Now, Gonzalo Garcia stepping in for the fever-stricken Kylian Mbappe gave Real an early lead with a composed finish, but Ruben Neves then levelled from the spot kick before halftime as Simeone Inzaghi's men showed defensive grit as well as enough attacking intent to rattle their illustrious opponents. Now, a last gaps missed penalty from Federico Valverde summed up a day when Real Madrid's legs as well as ideas whittled in the heat as well as humidity at a nearly sold-out Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. Real will next face off with Mexican side Pachuca in their next game on Sunday, while Al Hilal will take on Salzburg in what could also prove a decisive clash for qualification to the knockout stages. Cricket news now. The Proteas batting consultant Ashwell Prince has issued a timely reminder to South African cricketers looking to push the national team aside for a low-hanging fruits of T20 leagues across the world. Now, South Africa's ICC World Test Championship winning men's team touched down at the OR Tambo International Airport earlier on Wednesday with the mace in hand as they rightfully received a hero's welcome following their success at Lord's in England this past weekend. Now, Prince, who formed a crucial part of head coach Shukri Conrad's technical team, says the joys of winning a major trophy with the Proteas badge on your chest trumps any lucrative reward of playing in a T20 global league.
Well, you're hoping that, the young kids will aspire to play Test cricket as much as they aspire to play the short format, the T20s and all that. Something I said in the dressing room to the players before the match, that there are lots of badges in the world, like T20 badges for lots of teams around the world, and you can earn a lot of money. But only this badge can give you the opportunity to walk out into the middle of Lords and represent your country and do what they have done. Only this badge can give you that opportunity. So, for every young player, don't ever forget that.
Now, despite his work bearing fruit as Aiden Markram as well as Captain Themba Bavuma notched up an instrumental century as well as a half century respectively, Prince insisted the credit should go to those who stepped onto the pitch on the day.
In the background, the boys have to go out there into the cauldron and do the business. We just try and prepare them the best that we can. Yeah, look, like I say, we just in the back trying to prepare them as best as we can, but all the credit must go to the boys.
And finally, Asanda, you touched on it earlier. Shubman Gill will be in the spotlight in a new-look India side without star batsman Virat Kohli as well as Rohit Sharma bid to end their 18-year wait for a Test series win in England. So Gill succeeded Rohit as the captain after the latter announced his retirement from Test cricket just a few months back. And days later, Kohli said he was also bowing out of red ball internationals as well. Gill has rather now added additional responsibility to filling Kohli's shoes at the number 4 position in the batting order. So India Vice Captain Risbah Pant on Wednesday revealing that that's where the new skipper would now be batting in the first of 5 Test matches against England starting at Headingley this coming Friday. So the 25-year-old Gill has a modest Test batting average of 35 in 22 matches, a figure that drops to 29 in away games and then declines further to under 15 in 3 matches in England. So India's number 4 position has been dominated during the past 3 decades by the all-time batting great Sachin Tendulkar as well as Kohli, who in that specific position scored 566 runs between them in 278 Test matches. Now, Gill's first challenge will be ensuring the demands of captaincy don't detract from his batting in England, where India have won just 3 Test matches dating back to 1971, 1986 and 2007. So a big task awaiting Shubman Gill, taking, of course, the side to their first Test match against England tomorrow. That's a wrap from the Sports Desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Your weekday afternoons have been upgraded by The Upside with me, Tebohole Khuleni, and my partner in crime, Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
And if you want to find out all things luxury, fashion, travel, and arts and culture, this is exactly the place to be.
If If it's hip, if it's happening, we are talking about it. We talk about what's now, what's next, and most importantly, what matters most on the African continent and the diaspora.
Do you know what time it is? Catch us every weekday on Channel Africa from 1 to 4 p.m. Central African Time.
Yeah, that's us every weekday afternoon.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of business now. Here's Buntle Headbush with our economics news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. In our top story this morning, the chairperson of regional bloc ECOWAS's Council of Foreign Ministers, Yusuf Taga, says West African nations want to strike deals with the U.S. over energy and rare earth minerals. However, the Trump administration's looming expansion of travel bans risks derailing those efforts. U.S. President Donald Trump this month implemented full or partial travel bans for foreign nationals from a dozen countries as part of his immigration crackdown, and a possible broadening of these restrictions to an additional 36 countries would include nearly all of West Africa. Taga says this could be unfortunate if it came to pass because the region has many opportunities and is ready to do deals. The Commonwealth remains optimistic about its shared future, with leaders pointing to strong foundations for economic growth. In her keynote address at the Commonwealth Business Summit in Windhoek, Namibia, newly appointed Commonwealth Secretary-General Shirley Botchway highlighted the unique advantages that can help accelerate intra-Commonwealth trade.
We have the fundamentals: a market of 2.7 billion people, shared language, legal systems, and deep trust, a 21% average cost saving on intra-Commonwealth trade. But we also have something more important, a shared belief that trade and investment should deliver prosperity for everyone across all 56 of our member states, from the largest economies to the smallest islands, from cities to rural communities.
Meanwhile, Samoa's Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Fiame Naomi Matafa, has issued a stark warning about the fragile state of the global order. Addressing the Commonwealth Business Summit, Matafa says the world is facing growing conflicts and crises, urging Commonwealth nations to adapt in the face of shifting geopolitical economic forces.
We exist in a world of growing conflict, war and crisis. Too many of us are facing an uncertain future, unsure of how we will do good on today's needs, tomorrow's investment, and our survival. The attack on multilateralism is of particular concern. From where we stand, the few systems that once promised us protection are being dismantled. More importantly, for this gathering, geopolitical and geo-economic factors are influencing shifts that can only accelerate the fragmentation of the global.
Some economists are optimistic that consumer price inflation in South Africa will remain low despite uncertainty around global developments. Stats SA says inflation held steady at 2.8% in May after rising marginally in April, up from 2.7% in the previous month. The food and non-alcoholic beverages category was the only one contributing to the 0.2% monthly increase to the CPI. Economist Davie Rood notes that the overall inflation print has been low for some months now, contributing to a fall in inflation expectations.
But more importantly, perhaps, is that since inflation has been around 3% for quite a long period of time now is perhaps the time for the Minister of Finance to reduce the inflation targets, move away from the 3 to 6% band. Don't even set the inflation target at 4.5%, but set it at 3%. Now is that absolute wonderful opportunity to change the inflation targets, to change it to 3% in line with what the Reserve Bank would like to see inflation targets to be.
The chairman of the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, says now is not the time to cut interest rates with the U.S. economy facing inflationary pressures. The Fed again left its key rate unchanged despite President Trump's sustained calls for cuts. Jerome Powell said U.S. consumers would be picking up some of the bill for Trump's import taxes, with prices in some sectors already starting to rise.
We believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. Surveys of households and businesses, however, report a decline in sentiment over recent months and elevated uncertainty about the economic outlook, largely reflecting trade policy concerns. It remains to be seen how these developments might affect future spending and investment.
Time now for a look at the indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,543 naira 57. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 28. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 60. And in Zambia, it's 24 kwacha 11. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 49. Russia, 78 rubles 47. India, 86 rupees 43. In China, it's 7 yuan 18. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 99 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 86 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,353 and platinum at $1,315 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil has edged up slightly this morning and is now sitting at $76.82 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
It's 8:45 Central African Time. Let's talk the South African Department of Agriculture now, who have partially lifted a ban on the import of poultry products from Brazil. Starting today, poultry products from Brazil will once again be allowed into the country, except shipments from Rio Grande do Sul, a region affected by a recent outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI. The partial lifting of the ban by the department is seen as a critical step in addressing South Africa's growing food security concerns. For more on this, we're joined on the line by the Deputy Director General for Biosecurity, Agricultural Production Regulatory Services and Disaster Management at the Department of Agriculture, Dipepeneneng Serage. Dipepeneneng, thank you for joining us and welcome again to Channel Africa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, and good morning to you and to your listeners.
So let's start last week with the Department of Agriculture having made an assessment of whether the regionalization of imports of chicken from Brazil can be put in place to ensure local demand for the product is met. Brief us on what happened in terms of the outcome here of this assessment.
Yes, the outcome has revealed that the Brazilian authorities have been able to contain the outbreak to only one state, and that the measures that they're taking in and around that state and within 10-kilometer radius from the state, there are no circulating virus and there are no challenges. So the virus is not circulating, and we are a bit comfortable that we may resume trade. That doesn't mean we are relaxed. It means we're going to continue to monitor the situation. To monitor the situation and to ensure that the virus does not get beyond to where we think it is.
What was the extent of this outbreak, according to Brazil's Ministry of Agriculture? You say it was just within one state.
It is within one state. Since we suspended trade, we've been asking for data, and data has been forthcoming, and the latest data we got confirmed that it hasn't circulated beyond the state, that Rio Grande do Sul. So that's what they also report. And I must also add that South Africa is not the only country that imports poultry and poultry products from Brazil. In fact, we are not even amongst the medium in terms of their trade with in poultry and poultry products. There are others whose orders are 5 times ours, and if other countries, those countries have also lifted or have partially lifted the ban.
Are we talking all poultry or poultry products or both?
So what we say is poultry and poultry products. This will mean the meat, the product called MDM, which is basically mechanically deboned meat, which is used for production of polonies and all the related cold meats. So we, as South Africa, we import a lot of that. In fact, Brazil is our only source for that with which we make polony and cold meats. So we also, but poultry and poultry products refers to that. It also refers to eggs. It also refers to day-old chicks. So we just refer to the whole as a poultry and poultry products, because in the event of an infection, it means all of those would be risk material.
So what was the impact then that the ban was having on importers of mechanically deboned meat? As you say, MDM, Brazil is the only importer for us.
Only exporter to us, yeah. The impact wasn't that big. As you would know, it takes about a month for shipment from Brazil to get to South Africa and to be finally released into the system. So there wasn't really much impact. There would be impact. Obviously, the business people would start getting jittery. They would start trying to ration and all of that. That impact happened. But in terms of the volumes, we hadn't gotten to where there was already shortage of MDM. We were just concerned, but we didn't. Let me just also go put on record saying we lifting this suspension. It's got nothing to do with the pressure the pressure of meat, the pressure of poultry products. We don't use that to lift or to assess the risk. If we find at any stage that the virus is circulating beyond the state of Rio Grande do Sul, we will suspend. So I just want for your listeners to understand that we lifted this suspension on the basis of the information that we received and the surety that from the Brazilian authorities that the virus is not circulating beyond where it's supposed not, where it was first detected. So the impact wasn't that much. There was obviously impact, and we are actually assessing getting data, but it hasn't gotten to where there was going to be a poultry product shortage in the country.
All right. As we say, Brazil does not only export poultry and poultry products to South Africa, but to other countries as well. Was South Africa's decision to partially lift this suspension based on examples seen then from those other countries, or it was an individual decision?
It's an individual decision. Our situation is unique. We don't really use that. I use that to show that Brazil supplies the better part of the world with poultry and poultry products. But our decision is actually independent. If you look, for instance, within a week after we put import suspension, Namibia, our neighbor, went ahead and lifted, but we did not, because we wanted to first get data ourselves. So we're not going to rely on any other country. We couldn't even rely on the decision by Namibia. We wanted data ourselves. We analyzed it ourselves, and to be happy that the risk is negligible.
In terms of monitoring stages and time frames, I know you say that you'll be monitoring to make sure that the outbreak is contained and it doesn't spread to other states in Brazil, and if should it spread, it will be immediately withdrawn. But what are the time frames that we are looking at in terms of knowing and getting that info to know whether to withdraw or continue?
As things stand, Brazil has been able to contain, and they are almost at the end of eradicating the outbreak. The beauty with bird flu is that the birds themselves have got a very short lifespan. So, and they are confined to one specific area. So by cleaning, without going to too many details, it means birds that would have been infected would have been culled, and they would be removed from the system. So you wouldn't have, so it's easier to tell if there's a circulating virus again. So by us asking for data, we wanted specifically data with regard to what they're doing with the infected flocks, what they did with that, and how did they go about cleaning and the facilities themselves, and also ensuring that conducting surveillances to ensure that there isn't any other virus or circulation of virus in any other area around and that borders with this specific state of Rio Grande do Sul. But at the same time, you ensure that they send us constant information about the steps that they are taking. So on the basis of that, and also the ethically and legal right report if should there be an outbreak.
All right. So you maintain that had the ban remained in place, it wouldn't have affected the country's growing food security that much. We're still okay with our poultry.
At this stage, perhaps maybe in 2-3 months to come, it was going to begin to. So our timing, which we're happy, it's got nothing to do with the availability of products, but it's got everything to do with the safety and the risk assessment. But luckily, 19 days on, basically 30 days on, as you remember, we suspended them a month ago. Mm-hmm. A month on, the impact in terms of the supply of poultry and poultry products wasn't really that much, so we were still fine. It takes about, like I said, about a month for products to be shipped to go to our shores, and about 2 weeks or so for them to be processed into the country. So we were still busy receiving those that, as you remember, we had banned products that were manufactured after the 30th of April. So there were already products that were already destined to our shores, and there were products that were in facilities in Brazil that could still come. So people must understand that when we suspended the import, we excluded, if you remember, products that were manufactured before the 30th of April. So those continue to come.
Dipepe Neneng, thank you so much again, and do have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Dipepe Neneng Serage is the Deputy Director General for Biosecurity, Agricultural Production, Regulatory Services and Disaster Management. That's at the Department of Agriculture in South Africa. Well, on Thursdays, we've got the Channel Africa Conversations podcast. And this week, Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, a seasoned career diplomat and former Zambian ambassador to South Africa, pays tribute to the former President Edgar Lungu, who passed away last week in South Africa, where he was receiving medical treatment. Mwamba remembers some of the moments they shared with the late statesman, and he was speaking to our colleague Peter Ndoro on the Channel Africa Conversations podcast. Let's take a little bit of a listen.
President Lungu is the one that quickly quieted the debate. He says, I'm a lawyer. I'm trained as a lawyer. I'm currently Minister of Justice. I'll not be the first one to abrogate the law. Despite the strong wishes of President Michael Sata, despite his willingness to make me act as president during this crisis, unfortunately, the law is the law. Now, camps had emerged. That decision alone would take the presidents to the left or to the right. But President Lungu was willing to hand it over and give it up immediately. All of us, his supporters, were very annoyed with him. It's like he had given away the family silver. But that's kind of a man who didn't hunger for the office, who was willing to give it up if it was for the benefit of the country or if it didn't abrogate the constitution.
Catch the Channel Africa Conversations podcast once a week, every Thursday on www.channelafrica.co.za. What you can also catch on Channel Africa is On the Move, and that comes after Africa Rise and Shine, and that's with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tao. Palesa joining us in studio to give us a sneak peek in terms of what to expect on this 19th of June. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Do you know what personality type you have?
Yes, I'm a type A for sure.
What does that mean?
It means I'm a perfectionist to a certain degree.
Okay.
I'm also a leader type of a person. I'm a go-getter. Mm-hmm. But I'm also very loyal.
Oh.
And maybe I'm stubborn at some parts.
It sounds like maybe is for sure.
Most January babies are, because my birthday's in January.
Okay, I see. Well, that's what we'll be talking about in the first hour of today's show, the different personality types. Not everyone like yourself knows exactly where they fit in when it comes to the different personality types. So we're going to be breaking it down and taking a look at that with Deborah Olusola, clinical psychologist. And then we're moving on into our Becoming feature. This month, the month of June, is International Pride Month. And we're going to be speaking about something called trans joy. And this is when transgender and non-binary people experience a higher level of euphoria or happiness because of positive experiences and I think gender affirmation from, themselves, but also from society. So we'll be unpacking that in the second hour of the show with transgender woman Yaya Mavundla, and activist.
I love her.
Yeah, she's amazing, isn't she? We're also going to be going to our third hour, the family and parenting corner, sort of moving back to looking at how conflict resolution for African families used to look like and how we can still use those in today's times. And we're speaking about those kinds of conflict resolution where a family can reach out to maybe the community chief or the local chief, and they go and they sit in a lekgotla. So this is a gathering by people in the community and hash things out from a family perspective, but involving the entire community. So we'll be looking at that type of conflict resolution for families and how we can implement that in today's world.
That would be hectic, though, to get to the level of a chief and have a lekgotla.
Yeah, it does get hectic, but it still happens in our communities.
Yeah.
So I think it's amazing because then the family itself is not just accountable to them. So even if it's like the parents in a family who are having a big conflict, it's not just themselves that they're accountable to, but they also become accountable to the greater community, which helps them solve the problems.
Okay. Trans joy, I love how it's termed, that phrase. That should be a very interesting one to look forward to.
I'm looking forward to
and
that one as well.
you couldn't have gotten a better guest than
I know. So it's definitely going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, that's On the Move coming up after Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. Do stay tuned. And remember, you can send your views and questions across all the various social media platforms. I can't think of one that we don't exist in. Our handles are at Channel Africa 1. So we'd love to hear from you. From me, Asanda, Beda. Let's do this again tomorrow, 6 till 9. Peter will be back joining me as I was riding solo for the past 2 days. It's about time he comes back. Let's do that then. But now, let's catch up with the news. Here's Onel Nsinzi with our news bulletin. And it's 9 o'clock Central African time. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Looking at your top stories, tension rising over who controls the funeral of Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu and Rwanda and the DRC's initial peace agreement ahead of signing next week. The latest news, greetings to our listeners. Tension is rising over who controls the funeral of Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu, which has led to halting yet again the repatriating of his body from South Africa yesterday. The family is accusing the government of breaching key agreements over his funeral. And I'll say it is very difficult